This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. This week in the studio, through darkness, dust, and gunfire, he led warriors where few dared to follow. From the deadliest SEAL missions to forging tomorrow's heroes, his journey is one of sacrifice, brotherhood, and survival. This week, step into the world of a true American original, Joey B. What's going on, my friend?
What's up, DJ? Hi, thanks for having me.
You know, I had to say the Joey B. Everyone knows you as Joe Brackett, but you told me that our mutual friend that introduced us, that was the moniker that he gave you, and that's the one that stuck. So, guys, you might know him by Joe Brackett, but it's definitely Joey B. in his world and the guys that I know him from. Man, I'm so glad you're on here. We've talked extensively. I think we've talked for actually hours on the phone now with each other about this, and I'm super excited about this. And we looked at your conversation in a bunch of different ways, you and I both did, and how we were going to kind of approach stuff. And I think we've come to the right decision to kind of paint that whole picture, not black, not white, not anything, the good, the bad, and all of it tied in to show just how it creates the person that it did. I want to start off the conversation by talking about, you know, when the idea of you coming on the show was brought up, Ty told me, that you were the best SEAL that he had ever worked with. And I know it's an embarrassing thing to say, but I think it holds a lot of weight, especially coming from him. I just kind of want to, before we get this conversation going, what the word brotherhood means to you.
Yeah, great question. You know, I feel like that term brotherhood definitely gets thrown around a little bit too casually. And then first off, Ty, thanks, man. What a humble thing to say, and you know, back at you, brother. Um, but in the sense of, you know, guys that are going to go shoulder to shoulder and be in combat together, it says a lot of what type of person that takes, and you have to be there for each other. So not just in combat, but mentally, you know, back home, taking care of each other, hanging out with each other, knowing people's personality outside of the command, and you know, that's what it means to me. And you know, I think that a lot of operators might share that sentiment.
When you talk about the word brotherhood, I think it is, I think sometimes it might be overused a lot, because yeah, it's a cool word to throw out there, and it's a nice moniker to put, but I don't think people put the true effort into the word brotherhood that it's supposed to. I think it's more of a catchphrase than anything.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And you know, on the extreme end, you know, when I talk about it in the sense, you know, that Ty meant it, and then, you know, the operators that I hold near and dear to my heart, like when we talk about brotherhood, man, we're talking about, hey, I'm going to be there for you whenever you need me. And that might be on the battlefield, and I would gladly lay down my life for my friends. Um, I really mean that. And I know most guys do too, coming from, you know, our neck of the woods.
You know, when you talk about laying down your life, that's the biggest thing that you could do for somebody. And it takes a different mental approach to doing what you do that way. You know, most people, not knocking any other jobs, you know, but most people don't go to work knowing that they could give up their life, you know, every single day that they do it. What kind of mental toll does that take on someone like you?
Uh, yeah, great question again. You're kind of when you're in it, right? When you're training and you have a purpose, you know what the mission statement is. All the guys are jiving together. I mean, it, it's it's fairly easy to do that. Like, hey, I got something to focus on. Um, and then it's not really until I was finished with the Navy where I kind of was able to reflect back and, I can take a wrap off for a while and, figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. And that you start to really like realize those things.
You think you still think about that kind of stuff today?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
All right, let's do what we always do. We got to start way back at the beginning for you. You grew up poor, a lot of siblings, bounced around from location to location, and you and I had talked, and you said that it set you down the path of not being really close to a lot of people, not taking the effort once you got to a location to get to be friends because you knew that you would probably just be moving again. Can we talk about your childhood and kind of how that upbringing started to shape who you were for this service?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Um, so if you take a look at the map, that's that small piece of Ohio that touches Kentucky and Indiana. I was born there. Um, and then I grew up mostly, I like to say, in northern Kentucky, but I kind of bounced around that tri-state area of Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. But um, I have a great family, big family. There's seven of us total. Single mom that was doing the best she could. Uh, we were poor. We definitely were. But as a young kid, you don't know what you don't know. You just know what your version of normal is. So, later on in life, as you gain perspective, you kind of look back and be like, yeah, that was, I guess that wasn't normal. But, you know, uh, you just mentioned it, the moving around a lot and stuff. It did, I wouldn't say it took a toll, but it's like, you show up to a new school, a new neighborhood, you're making friends just playing in a neighborhood. There's some things that happen naturally, but I never really like sought it out. So, I mean, if it happened organically, I wouldn't push back against it, but I definitely wasn't seeking it. Um, I would say, I mean, at least outside of my immediate family group, my brothers and sisters were all pretty tight. And, I was different, but getting outside of that family group, I would say a little bit introverted, kind of quiet, um, keep to myself for the most part, but still seeking adventure as a young man, riding my bike super far away and playing in the woods with my brothers and some kids in the neighborhood, playing paintball, doing stuff like that. Um, so but I was super into drawing. Still am, still somewhat of an artist, I would say. Got out of practice for a little bit there, but I think at the heart of me, that's who I always was is someone that has an artistic mind. Um, man, I'm trying to go back as far as I can, and we discussed this on the phone, but my oldest memory is definitely a traumatizing one, and just to kind of I guess set the scene a little bit. Um, my mother was a single mother. I never had the fortune to meet my father and remember it. So, I don't know. I don't remember what his voice sounds like or what he looked like. And there are very few pictures. But he died in a car accident. He was a truck driver, drove a big rig and got in an accident and was crushed by a vehicle. Um, and my mom, she had I have two older siblings I had two older siblings at the time, still do. My two older sisters. I'm the oldest boy, and my mom was pregnant with my little brother. Uh, Shortly after my dad passed away, we lost everything in a house fire. Like the house was just completely burnt to the ground. And come to find out later as I grew up, my mom would tell me like, "Hey, you were messing around with fire and you set that fire." That's a lot for a kid to take, I do appreciate her telling me that. And, my mom knows how I feel about her. I love her very much. And she knows that. So, um, but that's a lot of weight for a kid. And my oldest memory when that was happening was, not messing around with fire or matches or anything like that. But I do remember running when I saw it and hiding in a closet and a fireman yelling for me, saying, "Joe, it's okay, come out. Where are you?" And they were able to get everybody out. So pretty out unscathed for the most part, other than losing everything we had. Um, and then from there, we just bounced around from family member to family member, and I could only imagine what my mom was going through with four small kids now, brand new baby, and she lost the man that she loved, and now she just literally lost everything. So it takes a strong woman to keep going through that. Um, but yeah, bouncing around to different families until we could get to family members, staying with relatives and things like that. Um, you know, my dad had just passed, so I had, a plethora of uncles, on my dad's side and my mom's side, and aunts and, my grandmothers that, you know, uh, there was a lot of good times in there, although there was some tragedy. But, mostly from what I remember from being a kid is, you know, just I remember the hard times, walking to the grocery store with no car, paying for things with food stamps because we didn't have any money, and, you know, not knowing when the lights are going to get turned back on, or, why is the water cold when I take a bath, or, hey, we're camping for the whole summer. This is awesome. How can we do this? Not realizing that we had nowhere to live. But as a unit, as a family, we were always together. Um, you know, s- Fortunately for me, having six siblings, we're there for each other. And that helped out a lot.
There's a couple questions that come up with everything that you're saying. The first one is when I ask you about brotherhood. The reason I ask you about that was because we talk right now and we say that, as you move through as a kid, you didn't really take the time to make friends. If it happened organically, it did, but you didn't really seek it out. And then you talk about that closeness of your family. And then we move to another nomadic lifestyle of you being in the SEALs, moving around from teams, moving, different areas of operation. And you take what you learn from your family and you put it into friends. That's why I brought Ty up in the beginning. How do you think all of that as a kid, that closeness with the family, not having those friends, how do you think it affected you going into that kind of lifestyle where it is a brotherhood?
You know, Great question. First, just let me preface by saying, like, I do have friends from childhood, and we still talk, and uh, and
We're going to
uh,
bring
and
him up in a minute.
but I was seeking that, man, and not necessarily the friendship portion of it, but just guidance in general. My uncles were trying to do what they could um, to be a father figure to me, and they did great. Um, but it wasn't constant, it wasn't consistent, and you know when I got to the teams, man, I mean, you talk about having mentors. um when I got to the team, I was super young, and that that those father figures that I was looking for, you know my mom, bless her heart, tried and failed many times, but she was trying. When I got to the team, my first LPOs and my first chiefs, you know, they were my father figures. They were raising me, even though I was a young man. And, I would argue that going through that type of stuff as a young kid kind of forces you to age quicker. You got to get over the small stuff, and you got to do your part to support the family. And, when you're of age to work, you're going to work, and you're going to contribute. And it's just something that I wanted to do, not just needed to do for survival. So, not necessarily the friendship and the brotherhood that you get, although that organically came later, once you start establishing your relationships at the team. But I think I was more seeking the fatherly role.
I want to kind of bring this up, and you and I talked about it on the phone, but I think it's something that we should point out. You bring up the father figures that you got in the SEAL teams. You've also said just now that your mom tried and failed at a lot of things. You and I have talked about a couple of different of those father figures that came in, the fathers of your sisters and brothers, that came in. There was one in particular that we talked about that you called dad, that you got along with, but he disappeared after a while. And then you talk about other ones that you couldn't stand. What was it, the traits about the one that you did call dad that you saw in these SEAL guys that you looked at as father figures?
Great question, man. So I talked about one of my oldest memories. Well, one of my second memories is my mom was a big fan of Cadillacs, and she had a lot of kids, so that's probably why. Um, but my my one of my memories is sitting in the back of this Cadillac, and my mom's a huge fan of Bob Seger, and so am I. I just remember that the song playing, and looking up in the front seat and seeing my mom in the passenger seat, and then a man that I assumed was my dad. Um, and he wasn't, but some of the qualities that you talked about, and I will tell you that my two, the kids that my mom had with that man, they would speak differently about him now, and we can get into that later. But at the time, you got to think about what this man was coming to do. Single mother, lots of tragedy. She's seeking companionship, um, and he's about to take on a fatherly role for four children that aren't his. So, I don't remember getting. It's hard to explain. Well, I guess it's not hard to explain. He did the things that a typical father would do, play out in the yard, play baseball, play sports, teach you stuff. He was a mechanic, so I remember watching him in the garage and kind of learning some things, and teaching me stuff. Getting in trouble, but not unwarranted trouble, just, doing things that young boys do, getting in mischief. But nothing that was unwarranted. We come from an era, at least I did, where spanking was okay. So if I did something wrong, I just took my licks and moved on. Teach me a lesson, and then explain why what happened, and then move on. And yeah, one day he just wasn't there anymore. And it was quite a while because my mother had two children with him.
How do you think you look at loss? And what I mean is that guy's just gone one day. So when you're in the teams and you lose teammates, and it's a whole different thing. But do you think you approach loss differently than a lot of people do?
Yeah, I definitely do. Appreciate that question, but um, yes, I do. And I know this with the guys, that the nature of the people that you interview on this show, but when you're a part of a community that has a specific mission, you take a loss, which we do. You got to keep going, man. Like, you got to keep going. I'm not saying not to reflect on that loss, because we do. But at the same time, the mission is, you got to put the mission first. You don't really get the time to reflect the way that you should. And it wasn't the attachment of that person, the feelings that you feel when you're around them, or the way they present themselves, or, their character, how they act. It's not so much that. Uh, it's just because I still think about that. You want to keep their memory alive. Um, but having the loss as a child, I think I was just became a little bit numb to it, because I was used to it. I lost my father once I was of age to come to realize what that meant. And then, people come into your life, they come in, try to do their part, try to make things work. For some whatever reason it doesn't, and then they go away. Now insert new trial. So it kind of makes you a little bit callous, um, especially when you get to the team. The loss is terrible and it's tragic, and I wouldn't wish that on any family. Uh, but at the end of the day, if that person that you lost, that operator that you lost, they wouldn't want you to sit there and feel sorry for them not being around. They'd want you to go out and do better, make a difference in this world in any way, shape, or form. And we owe it to them to do that. But I can definitely see, you know, like when a family member passes away. Like, for instance, my grandfather passed away, my dad's father. Also, was a great mechanic, and he got really, really sick with Alzheimer's when I left to go into the military, and he died while I was in training. Um, and I remember calling back to my grandma and my uncle and just saying, "Hey, I'll come back. I'll do what I need to be there for the services." And you know, my uncle put it pretty straight to me. He's like, look, he wouldn't want you to leave training. Keep doing what you're doing. And, you know, so I did. And it just got easier to kind of to deal with the loss, to just put it in the back of your mind. And, where some person may react a certain way with a lot of emotions, I just tended to not do that. Shed a few tears in there at the casket. Um, you know, put your trident in the chest, or in the put your trident into the casket. Smash it in, and then after that, hang out with the guys, tell a bunch of stories to the family about them, have a few drinks, and then on Monday it's back to training.
You think that makes you numb?
I think there's an element there that definitely makes you numb. I mean, just to put it bluntly, especially in a leadership role and in a soft organization, you have to lead men. And if you're going to sit there and dwell on things and spend too much time on it, that could have a negative effect on the men you're trying to lead. So, um, I think over time and through training, you just kind of learn, like, hey, we'll deal with this the way we know how now, the way that we kind of see how the culture does. But we gotta move on, and it definitely makes you numb, and that can get bottled up.
How does that affect you when all that comes to a close and you can't be that numb guy anymore? You got to be the father. You got to be the one that can't really be numb to it. You've got to take it in. You've got to express at least a little emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm an emotionless person by any means, but it's an eye opener. Kids definitely help with that. I have 3 children of my own, and you know, still very close with all my family members. And I think if you were to ask anybody who really knows me, even if I'm silent or quiet, my true friends and my true brothers, not just the ones I had in SEAL training or the SEAL community, or the friends that I made along the way, and my actual brothers and sisters, you know, they know my heart. So even if I'm not good at expressing it, they know I'm feeling it.
I think that's a wise way to put it. Let's talk about that friend that you said you still have friends from childhood. There's one in particular that also became a SEAL. Um, what does that do? Because you have this friend, you move, you kind of lose contact, you come back with each other. I think in high school, right? You ran across each other in high
Yeah.
school again. You both decide to join the Navy. You both decide to become SEALs. Are you looking at him as a brother more than just a friend? Is that a
Oh,
brother
absolutely.
before? Yeah.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And my 2 brothers and all my siblings, they know this individual, and there was a point there in my life as I grew up in high school where, my mother and I weren't getting along. Um, and the man that she was with at the time, we weren't really getting along either. Um, so I left. I left the house. And I moved in with him. That was later on after we had met for the second time. So absolutely a brother, always will be a brother. Anytime that I need something and I reach out to him, he does not hesitate, and vice versa. And I owe a lot to this career that I have now because of how excited he was about doing this. And I kind of, to some extent, I mean, man, I fell on his every word. And it was it yeah, I owe him a lot, and I love that guy tremendously, and he knows it. But definitely a brother, 100%.
When we talked about him before, I think he was the one that actually talked you into becoming a SEAL, correct?
Yeah. So just to back up a little bit, I was living in smaller inner city in Ohio at the time, and um, we were about 10 years old, so right around the fifth grade time. Um, we would take the same path walking home from school. Um, so we just established a friendship, how 10-year-olds do. Hey, let's ride bikes. Hey, let's play in the yard, or whatever. So there's that element when we were younger of just doing what kids do, right? Um, and then I had moved away, and then he had moved away. And it didn't even dawn on me that I would ever see this person again until, fast forward to I'm in high school. So significant time had passing, and he come to find out later on that he was bouncing around the same way that I was. Uh, and he had also lost his father at a young age. I mean, not quite two. I believe he was a little bit older. Um, and I mean, honestly, man, I think God put him back in my life. I remember getting on the school bus, going to a new school, and now I'm in Indiana. That little ring of the tri-state area, and getting on the school bus, and I saw him, and he saw me, and we knew each other. But obviously, we're older now, and we're still boys, but boy, we knew each other. Something was happening there, and then we get off the school bus and get into the school, and we're like, he's like, "Is your name Joe? Yeah. Is your name Brandon? Yeah." We're like, we know each other. Um, so, when I say things happened organically, like in a school, uh, from that point on, he was like the only person that I talked to. Um, and it was great. It was great to have that, uh, especially in high school. And I was just ready to be done. I was tired moving around. Tired of having new teachers and new classes and learning new layouts and all that stuff.
Well, it's interesting that you say that though, because the job that you took is constant moving, constant changing,
Yeah,
constant
yeah,
new teachers for the entire
yeah.
career. The last thing I kind of want to say about growing up in your story was I think the most interesting part of it to me is how close that you are with your family, because having it separated by different fathers, different locations that you're moving to, all of that kind of stuff, you all stayed tight. And that could be, in most situations, an easy way for everyone to just kind of go their own way, do their own thing. What do you think it was about your upbringing or what you learned that kept you guys so close?
Yeah, great question, man. Like I said, my mom's a tough woman. Um, but man, she was hustling. She was hustling, trying to take care of us, and that meant she was working weird jobs and working weird hours. So a lot of the times she would depend on my older sisters to kind of watch the younger ones. And the reason we're so tight is, when my mom was absent because she had to be, um, my sisters were left in charge and making sure we're eating, make sure we do our homework. My older sister, um, she taught me how to draw. When I was have trouble in school, with homework or something, or she was the one helping me out. Um, and she didn't have to do that. And then same with, my other sister, picking up the picking up the reins when she had to as well. And then I'm learning from them, right? And now I have little brothers and now I have little sisters. So now, in me, my uncle's telling me and my mom's telling me like, hey, you're the older brother now. Like you gotta look out for the little ones here. So, we're all pretty close in age. We're all about 2 years apart. Some a little closer than others. Um, you know, and then those bad times, all you have is each other. And then if you're going to go through a hard time, and I can't describe how it is going through it alone as a kid, but I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine not having an older sister, uh, a little bit younger of a brother, but still kind of the same age. Like we had the same friends, we did all the same things. I just couldn't imagine not having that touch point of like, hey man, like, you know, I don't know, like if this is normal or, we're having fun, but like, there's not really an adult here all the time, Um, so I think that's the catalyst of why we kept close. And trauma has a way of bringing people together that experience it together. Um, and I was definitely aware of that, being young, and that's what kept us together. That's what did it. At the end of the day, whatever whatever man was in my mom's life at the time, or whatever house we moved into, um, we had each other to fall back on.
So when you go to the Navy, is there any, bit of guilt that you feel like you're kind of leaving your family, or this is the next step that I have to take logically in life?
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to childhood for a minute. I just, I grew up watching all the awesome movies, man, all the action stars, Schwarzenegger, and I saw Navy SEALs when I was little, so I knew what SEALs were, but I didn't really do much digging on the job. But the movie was awesome and entertaining.
I was just
Um,
about to ask if you saw that movie, because I'm telling you, it's still to this day one of my favorite movies.
Hey, it is. I mean, one-liners forever. I mean, now imagine seeing that movie and then being in a SEAL team. Everyone's dropping the one-liners. So, um, that was a little bit of an escape for me and my brothers, watching Van Damme movies, watching Predator, watching Missing in Action, all that type of stuff. So I say all that to say this, those movies and stuff having an influence on me. I was pretending to be a commando in the woods and playing what we called manhunt with my brothers and kids. So I don't think it was any surprise that my siblings knew that I was going to do something like that. Uh, Talked about it a lot. Didn't really put a pin in what that was going to look like. Um, but once September 11th happened, I was sitting in English class. I was a sophomore in high school at the new high school that I was at, and that happened. And I remember seeing the news and the teachers getting frantic, and you know, going into the military was already on my mind, but that definitely uh closed it for me. I was just like, that's it. That's all I need to see. I'm capable. I need to go serve my country. So they knew, and I knew, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. So I was looking at the Marine Recon, I was looking at Army Ranger and Green Beret, and then circling back to Brandon, the friend that I had when I was in fifth grade. I mean, this is all this guy talked about. He knew everything about SEALs. Every report we did in high school was about SEALs. All the books that he was reading were about SEALs, and and he just knew all about it. So, you know, we I knew he was going to be a SEAL, and he would kind of talk to me and say, "Hey, man, you don't want to be a Marine. Go be a SEAL." And he got me into reading all the Richard Marcinko books, and I was like, "Yeah, I think this is for me." And I hadn't made a decision. And then one day, he's like, "Hey, we're going to drive to the recruiting station," and then I just how much information he had. I mean, it's like he could see the future, and he's like, and he convinced me. So we walked straight into that recruiting station, uh, two scrawny kids from middle of nowhere. And, the chief that was sitting at the desk, like, how can I help you? And we're like, we want to join the Navy. We want to be Navy SEALs. I do remember a slight chuckle with him, but he took us very seriously. And, you know, once we got our foot in the door, I mean, it was time to, like, I was way behind the power curve training wise. I didn't grow up playing sports, organized sports. There was some natural ability there, but I never played on a team. I played baseball in the neighborhood and football and stuff like that, but I was never part of a team. Um, I was a scrawny kid. When I graduated, I was like 155 pounds, maybe soaking wet. I haven't even reached my. I think I was still growing taller. If it wasn't for buds, I might be like 6'4" without all that shit on your head. Um, so yeah, after that, I was living with Brandon at the time, and he was just like, "Hey, this is what we got to do. These are the workouts that we got to do. These are the things that we got to do." I remember, just scaring the death out of my mom with the things that we would do. We would, it's laughable now, but at the time, we thought this is what guys like us do. We'd put on our camouflage clothes and go play in the woods and try to look for animals and like learn how to track. But we learned how to rappel, reading books from the library, and then just doing things, making sure we were safe. But no one ever taught us. We taught ourselves, and we were jumping from train trestles over bodies of water, and anything could have went wrong. It didn't, thankfully. But man, if my mom could be seeing what I was doing in there, and I wasn't afraid to tell her. I would come back and we used to call them missions, and she'd be like, "Were you on a mission?" I'd be like, "Yeah," uh, and she just kind of went with it. Um, but yeah, I felt a little bit behind the power curve in that sense. So I was just me and Brandon were motivating each other, supporting them. I was not. I'll tell you, push-ups were my nemesis, and I was trying to build my bird chest up. Um, I mean, him and I were doing pull-ups on tree branches, you know. Uh, but yeah, we ended up training together. We went to the station together. We had obviously we're in the delayed entry program. We had to wait till we graduated high school to leave for the Navy. But, at the time, our recruiters were like, "Hey, when do you want to leave?" And, we both chose September 11th with intention. Like we wanted it to be on that day because it meant something to both of us. Um, and then from there on, man, we were together until we weren't. But we always kept in touch and we still do, a couple times a week here and there talking to each other. But man, I owe a lot of that mentality that I learned and gained, and how to, self-motivate and have some drive. I mean, full humility, I got it from him.
I don't think we need to talk about buds. Everybody talks about buds
Yeah.
in training. We all know what it is. Let's talk about when you go to your first team. Was that 1 or 3?
Team one.
Okay, so you go to team 1. You show up. You're this guy that knows everything like everyone does whenever they graduate from their stuff. Are you humbled right off?
Oh man, I think you got to talk a little bit about buds because it's hard to
Okay. All
not.
right. No, let's do it.
So at the time, in the delayed entry program, they had these things called a SEAL source rating. So there are only certain rates in the Navy that will allow somebody to go and get a chance to try out for SEAL training. Well, I mean, Brandon still is. He's just very intellectually smart. I mean, he was straight A student, honor roll. I was not. I was an A B student, C plus sometimes. Um, but
I like how you threw in the C plus sometimes.
um, and saying all that to say this is he scored really high on the ASVAB. He got a perfect score, and I did not. I passed it, but I didn't score high enough to get one of those SEAL source ratings. And, you know, thankfully, my recruiter at the time, he said, "Look, man, um, I'm gonna give it to you straight. You didn't score high enough, but that doesn't mean this is your only shot." So he's like, "You can go to boot camp. We're gonna have you go undesignated, um, and when you get to boot camp, you can request a waiver if you pass the screening test." So I said, "Okay." Um, and we both went to boot camp together. He went as an IT, and I went as an undesignated seaman. And the way they used to do it back in the day, so now we're talking, 2004. Going to boot camp, you go to do what they call your third class swim qual. Everybody in the Navy does this. You jump off a 15-foot platform. You show them that you can swim, do certain strokes on an elementary level, and then show them that you can float. Well, immediately after that test, there's these guys that work at boot camp, and they're called dive motivators. And you could just tell the temperature of the room changed. They came into the room and they said, "Hey, who here has a SEAL Challenge contract?" And a bunch of people raising their hands. And then he said, "Who here doesn't and wants to try?" And I knew because my recruiter told me that I needed to tell them that I wanted to try. So right then and there, we changed back out. You take the PST right at that moment. And I passed it. I barely passed it, but I passed it. Um, and then I got my SEAL source rating. So I got the waiver approved after that, and then I became a gunner's mate. Um, so I went after boot camp. You know, boot camp is what it is. Learn how to march, learn military bearing, learn your basic military knowledge, and then you move on to your A school. So for me, that was right across the street. Brandon's was right across the street as well. Different A school. He was an IT at the time, and we would go. work out with the dive motivators in the mornings. Both those schools were 6 months long, so working out for 6 months, and that's really where I made my gains, you know. Um, and I remember telling myself, "Hey, just get through this PST. You're gonna have some time if you get the gunner's mate thing, and that's where you really got to step it up." So that's what I did. And then we both graduated on the same timeline and showed up to Buds together. And the reason I said we should talk about Buds is, I mean, lots of funny stuff happens, and I just think comic relief is a huge part of Buds. You need that, and Brandon was definitely one of those guys. Very cocky, but very intelligent, and he lived up to the things that he said. Like he wasn't just saying it; he would do it. But I remember this one instance. We were right before we were about to start first phase. Um, we're on the quarter deck right there at the center, and we're two brand new seamen at the time, and we would check people in as they came in. So a lot of those, you can't start Buds until the whole class gets there. So a lot of guys are checking in intermittently, and sometimes they check in late at night. So you just sign them into the logbook. Well, this guy comes in, and he's older than me. At this time, I'm only 19 now. And Brandon and I are the same age. Um, I'm only 19. We're sitting on the quarter deck. It's not late at night, but it's also after working hours. Typically don't see many people coming in, but we had a guy come in and he was dressed in civilian clothes, and he looked in shape, and he just said, "Hey guys, checking in, new student, whatever." And Brandon's like, "What are you doing?" He wasn't wearing a uniform. He goes, "Dude, you got to check in uniform. Where's your dress uniform?" He's like, I figured uh there'd be no one here. Instructors probably aren't home. No one will see me, that type of thing. And I don't really think anything of it, but the guy kept pressing us. He's like, "Oh, how is it here? I hear about the O course." And he's like, "Oh, we do the O course all the time. It's easy." Um, and he points at me. He's like, "Me and this guy crush it. We're really good at it." Just saying too many words. And then he's like, "How you guys feeling, about the PST that we have to take? I can only do like 7 pull-ups." And at that time, my buddy, he's like, "7 pull-ups? Like, what the hell are you doing here, man? Like, you got to do a 10 at least to pass." And he's like, "Nah, I'll be all right." So we checked him in like any other student. And then the very next day is our first day of first phase. Um, uh, so I remember, you're standing out on grinder, you got, I mean, history all around you, all the things that you read about. And then you're standing on those duck feet, just like, all right, here we go. It's 5 a.m. Let's get this done. And that guy who we thought was a student walks out, gets on the podium and his instructor t-shirt. And, you know, he gets up there and he goes, "Where the fuck is," they called us by our last names, Brackett and D'Lo. And I was standing right next to D'Lo, so I look right at him. D'Lo's Brandon's nickname. I look right at him, and I'm just like, "Man, your mouth just got us in trouble again." So that instructor mustered us in the surf zone immediately, um, and he had us doing rocking chairs into the surf. So if you're not familiar with rocking chairs, imagine, early in the morning, waves crashing on the beach. You're laying down on your back, head facing the ocean, and you have to rock your legs back and completely submerge yourself as the waves are crashing. And him and I are locked arms, and you know we're going through it together. We're suffering together. And that instructor, he had always been firm but fair after that. But I remember distinctively, he tells us both to pop tall, and he just looks at us and he goes, "You guys are going to be all right." And we join the crowd, and then we join the class. Um, so yeah, I just had to throw that in there, man, because, you know, Brandon knows this, but I tell that story all the time. And that instructor, later on we became friends once we got to the team. And that was just something that we would sit around and talk about, when we would get together and remind him of that story, and we would always laugh about it. But that guy ended up becoming a great mentor of mine. So yeah, I had to throw that little piece of Buds in there. But there was a lot of guys like that. Him and I were pretty young dudes in Buds. um and I do remember getting on that grinder and being like, "Man, I do not look like everybody else here. I'm a skinny dude. These guys look like giants. They're beasts. But I made a decision when I was sitting there standing in ranks, and I was like, but you know what? Nothing that I do here is going to be harder than the things that I had to do in my childhood. So I can take the push-ups and I can take the beatings and, you know, I can take an instructor yelling at me. That's not going to be more difficult. The difficult part is let's just make sure you pass everything. So, and for me, that was a real eye opener because I had never seen the ocean. Coming from where I came from, first time I got wet and sandy was the first time I saw the beach. Uh, and
That's
then
quite an eye
now,
opener.
yeah. And I was always a decent swimmer, but I never swam in the ocean before. I never swam with fins on. So, you get in a pool, you think you're doing good, but that'll humble you real quick when there's no lane lines on the bottom of the ocean. And you could easily turn a 2 mile ocean swim into a 3 mile ocean swim, which we did. Brandon and I were swim buddies. So, I mean, we kind of just like held on to each other. Not physically, but like, hey, if you need something, I'm gonna check in on you. If you need, like, we're gonna see how each other are doing. And so we had that, we knew each other. So we just clicked up naturally. We were gonna do that. So we became swim buddies, and that first ocean swim, man, I'll never forget it. We thought we did good. We were the last ones. We were the last ones. And I remember the instructor, they'd be like, hey, dummy, fail. And then they'd have you go get a bottom sample. So now imagine being outside of the surf zone. You're in your little wetsuit that doesn't do much. They give you the time. They just told you you failed. And now you got to, from where you are outside the surf zone, you got to swim down to the bottom, grab a bunch of mud and sand, come up, put it on your head so that they could see that you did it. And then, you swim to the beach, take your licks, and then move on. So we got humbled real quick. And thankfully the way Buds was set up at the time and still is, the leadership that you have, the leadership within the students at that time, they're like, hey, we're going to put a strong person. Everyone could swim decently good, but hey, you need to get better at guiding. So you can keep up with this guy, but you don't know how to guide. So we're going to split you guys up and we'll put you with this guy that can guide. And they did that for both of us, and we were fine after that.
When you get to the teams, like I said, when you get there, yes, you were humbled there, but what's the difference when you get to the teams? I mean, you're seeing guys that have done it now, because you're what, talking 2000? We said 2006 when you get to the team.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're talking 5 years into the GWAT, and so guys have been grinding for that 5 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then just to touch on Buds real quick again, I remember sitting there, when Operation Red Wings happened, I was a student, and those instructors were not holding back anything. They showed us portions of that Al Jazeera footage, and they told us the names of the guys that died, and we did workouts in memorial for them. And that's another thing. When I saw that, I was just like, nothing's going to stop me. Yeah, I got to go through and I got to take my licks and I got to perform like everybody else did, but nothing's going to stop me now. Like, I really saw myself in those guys, and it really impacted me. Um, and then, as a student, the Buds instructors it kind of maybe I didn't know any SEALs at the time other than the Buds instructor. So when I seen a Buds instructor, I'm like, man, all SEALs are like this. Some are more difficult than others. Some are firm and fair. Some are kind of jokesters, but most of the time they're serious. So it's like, man. And then when you show up at the team, you quickly realize like they're not everyone's like that. We come from all walks of life. There's some sense of normality there, but definitely humbling, man. I knew it. How could you not know it? We all knew. We were at war. We all wanted to go where we sought to go, and getting to show up at the team, definitely a lot of nerves there, but I was received well. Um, I had mentors right off the bat. They knew who was graduating, so they had reached out to me. I was the only dude in my class that went to Team One, um, and I found that out like last minute after SQT, but um, I was received well, man. Definitely a little bit of nerves there, but once you get in the platoon space and you get over that first day, you quickly learn your role. Like, hey, you're a new guy, soak up everything you can, become a sponge, but we're going to send you to this school and that school, and you're going to have all these collateral duties. But also, by the way, hey, you're gonna make all the coffee and make sure the fridge is stocked and make sure everything's clean and be the first one here and the last to leave. And you guys are going to be taking the brunt of prepping the gear. And I had no problem with that. I had no problem with that. I knew I had to, earn what I had to keep earning what I had already earned, obviously talking about the Trident. Um, and I was completely fine with that.
Do you see anybody that wasn't?
Man, I've heard stories, other guys' stories about, showing up to the team as a new guy, but we had a unique group of new guys. It was only me, and in my particular platoon, myself and excuse me, two other guys. So there's only three new guys, and I was the youngest person in the platoon. Um, but as far as the new guys that I was with, we all knew what we had to do. My platoon chief, my LPO, they were very serious. They were like, "Hey, man, we are going to Iraq." They already knew it. We don't have time for bullshit. Like, we're going to train hard and we're going to do what we have to do. So, um, as soon as I hit the ground, there was no rest period. So when I got to Team One's cycle, they were just starting their workup. And most of the guys were just coming back from school. So there wasn't that much time when I showed up, check in, get your gear, meet everybody. And then, hey, first trip is coming up next week. Pack all your shit. And then learning everything on the fly. And I'll tell you, as a new guy, what you learn in SQT, they do really good at mastering, teaching you how to become a master at the basics. But you show up to the team, man. One of my collateral duties was an ordnance rep. Uh, I didn't even know what half the shit in there was. Uh, at that time in SQT, we got to look at night vision goggles one time. One time. Um, got to see laser systems one time. When you're in buds in SQT, the weapon systems that you run are just bare bones, man. Iron sights and send it. Um, so learning all these, the different nomenclature and the capability of all these weapons, and then, being in charge of maintaining them as somebody who doesn't know much about them. There was another new guy in another platoon. Him and I are good buddies, still. Um, we're going through the same thing. So we had, as a new guy, whatever department you get put in charge of, you're not really in charge of it. There's an older guy overseeing the things that you do. He's going to allow you to make those mistakes. Not egregious mistakes, but he's going to let you learn and then give you advice and just like show you what right looks like. And we had a lot of that. I got lucky in that regard. I just, a lot of guys just, you know, teaching me things, and I wanted to learn it. If they sent me to a school, I wanted to learn everything I could. When we were given a task, no matter how big or small, I wanted to do the best that I could. Like, I wanted to stand out. I wanted to be that team player, all the things that they talk about when you're in buds as an instructor. Like, these are this is the way that we present ourselves. And I wanted it. And, you know, I did what most new guys do. Soak up everything and be a good dude.
Let's fast forward a little bit. You're prepping up right when you get to your team. You're doing your workup. The first time you land in country, and I ask almost everybody on the show this: sights, sounds, smells, what you're feeling, what you're if you're thinking like, oh shit, this is actually real now.
Yeah, for sure, man. So, right after Red Wings, shortly after when I was in the team, um, that's when, Task Unit Bruisers, SEAL Team 3, everyone knew who they were. Jocko and his boys just crushing the enemy. Um, so I knew where I was going. My platoon chief said we're going to Iraq, and I was just like, this is what I'm gonna expect. So, you know, when Mikey Monsoor and uh, Brian Job and Mark Lee, those guys are dying, I'm in training, with the team. So got people that know these individuals, and I only know them by name, but I definitely gave them the respect that they deserved. And when we were at our first training facility doing our training, we found out about this, in the middle of the day, and we stopped what we were doing and talked about them and memorialized them. Uh, but man, fast forward a year and a half going into country, there's this thing that happens, right? You leave from North Island and you're going to stop somewhere along the way to refuel and then make your way into country. But I do remember the lights coming on, you know, and then one of my fire team leaders waking me up and just saying, "Hey, jock up," you know. So I'm like, okay. I'm looking around. Everyone's putting their stuff on, their body armor, helmet, taking their weapons out of the case. And there was a sense of like, man, is this plan going to land on at an airstrip, and I'm just going to get off the ramp and get after it? So I mean, that's what I was thinking. Um, I was completely wrong. We landed in Iraq, we landed in Al Assad, and we get off that ramp, and it's a freaking huge airport. And then we get off, we get all of our bags and gear, and we're all jocked up like we're gonna go on an op right away. But then we have these buses pull up, and then you get on the bus to go wherever you're gonna, get the in brief. And I just remember seeing like KFC, Taco Bell, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? This is not what I was expecting. But hey, military, we all know the saying, hurry up and wait. And so we waited there until we figured out where we were going to go. And obviously we got to load up all the trucks. But once we got outside of the base, though, that's when it really set in, because we left the base. A couple days later, you get your trucks and your vehicles assigned to you, and we have all of our gear. So we're going way out west in a place called Rawa. Well, mind you, we travel at night. You hear everything about the roads. Your older guys with the experience are talking about IEDs, so obviously you're experiencing that, but you just don't know what you haven't experienced yet. So me as a new guy, my LPO's doing his vehicle assignments, and he comes up and he's like, "Hey Joey, you're gonna drive this vehicle," um, and it was a flatbed truck, up armored, and it had our pallets on there and like an ISU 90, and I had a monocular night vision goggle that I had to drive with. So I'm just like, as soon as we get out of the gate, we lock and load. Everyone get ready. Here's your sectors of fire. We all knew it. But man, I remember white knuckling that steering wheel. Like I have never done this. I can't believe I'm doing it. This is what I asked for, but and I didn't have another team guy in the car with me. I had one of our CBs, and he's like, "Dude, can you even see?" And I'm like, "Bro, I can't see shit. All I can see is the two lights in front of me." Um, about halfway through the trip, I did run over some concertina wire, and I have to come up on the radio as a new guy and be like, "Hey, Chief, we got to stop," um, because the roads are just so narrow in some spots. So we get out, we set security, we fix the problem, we finally get to where we were. But you got to settle in. You gotta learn the area. The older guys had different responsibilities than I did. As a brand new guy, you're kind of handling like the physical part of the job, like, hey, get the gear ready and do this, while the older guys in the LPO and the OIC and the chief, they're getting with the other head shed from the other platoon, and they're like, okay, hey, where's the hot spots at? Uh, what's the latest intel dump? Let us see some imagery. What targets are you going after? So they're doing kind of the up and out stuff, the things that didn't even concern me.
Was
In
that a
my
lot
head, I'm
of
like,
left seat, right seat stuff?
what do you mean by that?
Like where they're actually the team you're taking over for. They're going out with you. They're showing you like, this is where we've
Yeah.
run into a lot of resistance. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
where.
for sure, right? You got the platoon that was just there, and they don't keep the whole platoon there, just a key group of guys. Um, so for me being an ordnance rep, and I was a comms guy at that point, so usually the comms guy would stick around, the ordnance guy. If you ran a department from your predecessor, that person's generally going to stick around, so they can just give you a good turnover. Like, hey, this is how we did it. This is what worked well. This is what didn't work well. So don't make the same mistakes we did. Kind of like an after action report. Hey,
Right.
here's what we did good. Here's what we did wrong. Don't make the same mistakes. So definitely some right seat, left seat for sure. Um, but I spent, you asked about senses, man. Very dry. To me, wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. Um, no humidity. Uh, I think it's a common misconception. People would think like, oh, it's Iraq, it's hot. Well, it gets cold there, significantly cold. And in those winter months, if you're a turret gunner, which I was, you're going to be taking a lot of that wind. Um, so yeah, I just remember it not being what I expected, uh, but also still realizing the weight of the job we were there to do. Uh,
Did, when you see the, because you say it wasn't what you expected, when you see the KFC and the McDonald's and all that kind of stuff at the kind of permanent built base that's there, uh, does it kind of dash your hopes? Like, wait, this isn't this isn't it at all.
Yeah, I think that being a young new guy, there's certain things that you have to focus on to make sure you're doing small things to make sure the team's ready, and it's all those little things that can
Right.
easily get overlooked. So I was really focusing on that because that was my lane. Hey, new guy, stay in your lane. Um, so getting there and seeing that, uh, it didn't, even though it was something that was unexpected, when we got out west and went to where we were actually going to
Of
stay,
course.
that was when it was like, okay, this is what this is more like it. Yeah, that's the main hub where everyone goes to outfit and refit, and that's where all the big aircraft come in, and we kind of disseminate from there. So it didn't take me long to realize that. And then getting out west in Rawa, being on that small Marine Corps base, within that base, we had our own little base. And also the commandos, the Iraqi commandos that we were training were also in that base. And then you're left out there alone and unafraid. You look out past the HESCO barrier and you just see, desert and hills. So, and that's kind of what I was expecting. Like, roughing it a little bit. Yeah, we have some things to remind us of home, but everything is modular and everything's tents and you know uh, scrape together water heaters that make allow you to have a hot shower or hot water. So very rugged, um, but definitely once I got there, I was like, okay, this is what
Right.
I thought because I hadn't seen the layout in the daytime yet. We got there in the middle of the night because we traveled at night at that time, and you can see what you can see on night vision, but that next morning after you go to
Which is
bed,
nothing.
yeah, that next morning when you wake up and you come out there and the sun's shining, now you can really get the lay of the land and look out and look at terrain. Then it kind of really settled in. Like, all right, this is all right, cool. I get it now. This is what it's gonna be like.
So let's move forward. And the first time you get in a gunfire, the first time you pull the trigger, you're behind the gun now.
So I didn't fire my weapon one single time during that. I didn't fire. Let me say it differently. I didn't fire my weapon at any enemy uh, in any sort of combat way on that whole deployment, which was surprising to me. Um, we took vehicles a lot everywhere, and I was the turret gunner. But I was not in the front vehicle, uh, and there was just no opportunity. Not that there's an opportunity, but no one really messed with us, man. At that time where we were at, you know, it, the locals knew, and if there was AQI there, they knew. Like, hey, stay away from these vehicles. Like, stay back 100 feet. Anybody who was there at the time can tell you those placards are all over all of our vehicles. So, there were a few warning shots fired by the platoon, not by me. I spent a lot of my time in the turret. Um, uh, but yeah, did not. Other than training the Iraqi commandos, I was a turret gunner and I fired my weapon on the range in training. Now, not taken away from our mission because my platoon chief at the time he was very good at explaining it. He's like, hey, this is what it is, expectation management. This is kind of our role. We're way out here, but we're going to focus on Overwatch and finding caches and building intel for our intel guys. And we had a running joke. We would comb the desert a lot. Um, and I was still learning. So, we're still doing some direct action stuff, but we would show up and, we'd make primary entry and, you know, you go in there and it's a family's house. There's multiple generations of the family in there. So you go in, you clear it just like you normally do, but now you have, children and women and old people. So you might find the person that you're looking for, but now you gotta, you know, I would imagine just like a police officer would, you gotta kind of like go get the person you're looking for, treat every other person with respect and like a human. That was a big thing for me. Um, so we go in and arrest these guys. So, not downplaying it in any way, but there was a sense of like, okay, we're like world police now. Um, uh, but I didn't fire my shots in combat until after that.
So I got to ask you then, you do all this training, you see 9/11 happen, you see Red Wings, you say that nothing will stop you. You go over there, you do this whole deployment. We'll say you quote unquote don't fire a shot in anger. You're not in a firefight.
Right.
Are you disappointed at all when you're like, what the fuck, man?
No, I wasn't. Not at all. Not even a little bit. I mean, obviously, I wanted to get after it just like everybody else did, but it's not like we weren't impacting where we were. We were still getting out into the community and working with the locals. And being a new guy, I didn't play as big a part as like my LPO or my chief or the guy that
Of
was
course.
running the intel. So we do these medical events and go provide medicine and healthcare and stuff. So there's an importance to that. Um, it, it definitely wasn't what I thought, um, but we were still making an impact, and it did make a difference. So I wasn't mad about it. I was just, it is what it is type of thing. And that same platoon chief that I just mentioned, and a lot of the older guys, there was this saying in the team, and I don't chase the dragon. Don't be chasing the dragon. Don't look for that opportunity to fire a weapon in combat and engage with the enemy. When it's your time, it's your time. And I understood that. Um, and I never chased it.
So do you think that it was so important to you, on these medical missions and taking care of the civilians that were there and stuff because of your upbringing, what you said about your family, that you were always the one to be the protector, to look out, your older sisters? Do you think that's why it was so impactful to you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was there, and in my heart, I was there to, in any way I could. I wanted to take bad people off the planet. Now, me as a new guy, I knew I wouldn't get to do that in the capacity that I had thought about doing it. Um, but this is not our country. We are guests here. The last thing I was on my mind is, ransack somebody's house and treat everybody inhumanely. It just wasn't what I was taught from my leaders, and it just wasn't something that was in me as an individual, even from before the SEAL teams. So, when I see a kid, I see a kid. When I see a woman, I see a woman. When I see an old person, I see an old person. When I see a bad guy, I see a bad guy. And, I'm going to do my best to rid the planet of that guy. So that's kind of how I saw it. And I think that, I mean, now that I'm here saying it out loud, I would like to think that most dudes shared that same sentiment. And just from the things that I experienced from other guys and the way that they interacted in those situations, I'm fairly certain that I'm correct.
Let's move forward to, I want to talk about when you hook up with Ty, because I think it's an important part of your career, because as we talk later on, he'll come back around into your career. But let's talk about that
Yeah.
first time you met, that deployment you did. And then I want to talk in specific about the incident that we talked about where you were both hit the same day.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're skipping ahead in time a little bit here, but no problem. So that first Iraq deployment, it is what it is. After that, I had this opportunity to go augment with development group as an enabler. So I went and did that in Afghanistan, and then I came back to Team One after that, and now I'm working in my platoon again, scheduled to go back to Iraq. So other than that during the tour, the workup where I went and was an enabler for development group, while the other guys were going to their schools and things like that. Um, when I came back, I fell into the middle of our ULT cycle. You know, talked about the experience that I had in Afghanistan, and then now it's right back at it. Hey, right back in the training schedule, mostly the same places. Um, and then fast forward to that deployment, we go back to the same place. We weren't way out west. We stayed on a base called Al Assad, and about halfway through that deployment is where I met Ty. Ty was coming back from Ty was the East Coast dude, and he was coming from Buds. So he went from East Coast to Buds, and then there was a time during about halfway through that deployment, there was a big push to Afghanistan. And if you were a sniper or a medic or a JTAC, you know, obviously you're going to keep minimal manning in country in Iraq, but if they had those qualifications, they really needed them there. So if you had those quals, you were going. So now, you know, we're about down to half a size, and, you know, we needed more bodies. So Ty was coming to team one, you know, the leadership did what they did and said, hey, you guys need bodies. We got this guy that's coming to team one. He's come from Buds. He's going to come join you on deployment. And he did. So that's when I met Ty. Um, I would say, you know, right off the bat, um, I'm a people person, man, in some sense, especially when it comes to operators. Even though I'm not good at showing it, that I enjoy talking to people, and, you know, I treat people with respect. You know, that might be like a thing that I wear on my face. I don't know. Maybe I got that resting operator face, we'll say. Um, so, you know, I could see that I wasn't very well received, in the sense that, hey, we don't know this dude. We know nothing about him. He's an East Coast guy. And, you know, between the East and West Coast, man, like there is some rivalry there, but it's more like a sibling rivalry. You know, we razz each other. It comes with the territory. At the end of the day, you find yourself on a deployment with an East Coast team. Everyone's gonna jive. You got a similar mission. Hey, you know, you're from one, you're from two, whatever. Let's go do the job. So there is some sibling rivalry there, but man, being at the team, man, your reputation, if guys don't know you, they can be a little bit standoffish. So for someone with like Ty, who's coming from experience, because, you know, I didn't find this out till later, but he'd been deployed before, um, way more than me. Um, you know, this was only my third deployment now, and like I said, he just wasn't received well. You know, just little things like not include him in certain briefs, or, you know, hey, you know, we had this routine where we would go to the pool and swim. You know, he wouldn't get invited to things, and I recognize that. Like we would go to the galley, and, you know, we're all clicked up, and, you know, Ty sitting by himself. So, you know, our first real interaction was me coming up in the galley, you know, in the middle of freaking Iraq. Like, hey man, like I know it must be a little weird for you being around guys that you don't know, but it is what it is, man. Like, get to know the guys, talk to some of the dudes. Let's get to know you a little bit, and then, you know, be a part of this team, whether we want to or not. We're gonna be teammates for the next couple of months, and we did that. So that was like our first real interaction. Now it didn't really start getting more personal until later on, right? So I knew who Ty was. We worked together in a professional kind of scope. And then, you know, there's those things that you do in the platoon hut when you don't have a mission going on, and, you know, you get stood down for a while, and, you know, guys are sitting around a campfire telling stories, and, you know, binge watching TV shows that, you know, at the time you had to download and put on hard drives. So it was all in that sense. And then when we had to go out and do work, we just went out and did work. So I didn't really get to know him at that point very well until much later.
How significant do you think it was for you to do that? Because you didn't have to do that. You could have just kept on with the deployment, done, you know, what it was with your guys. But how significant later on in your career do you think that was, that you took that first step?
Well, I knew it was significant right off the bat, just because, you know, even though he wasn't a new guy, he was new to the team. And, you know, I just went back to the young man in me, moving around a lot and going to new places and not feeling like you fit in. Now, it kind of seems a little weird to say about these dudes that are supposed to be some of the baddest guys on the
Right.
planet. Um, but we still have feelings, man. We're human. We have emotions. So, and I knew that. So I was just like, man, I want to make sure this guy we put him at ease. He can talk to people. We all got problems. Maybe he's got something he needs to get off his chest. Small, big, little, what, it doesn't matter. Um, I was already kind of that way. Um, I didn't like bullies. And you mentioned it earlier. I was a protector, and, he wasn't really getting bullied. He was just, and that didn't last very long, by the way. Um, we kind of fell into his groove, and I didn't, you know, like I said, it was not difficult for me to do that. I did not, um, there was almost no hesitation for me to do that just because of my upbringing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Um, through all these deployments, because you do that first deployment where you don't really fire a shot, then you go out with development group and you do that, and you see as an enabler, but you see a whole different world. You would agree, correct?
Absolutely.
So your first two deployments that you do are polar opposites of each other.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
Where do you think you felt most natural?
Um, Man, when I did that enabler piece, I was there for a very specific role. I was not an assaulter. I was not kicking doors down, but I had a very specific role, and I did well in that role. And I went from, you know, I hope no one's offended by this, and if they are, they, like I said, my true friends know my heart, so I know I'm not trying to say it in a bad light, but that Iraq deployment was just not dynamic at all. And then showing up to Afghanistan, when you get there, you're prepping at the beach with the squadron guys, and they're saying, "Hey, this is your role. Hey, this is what we're going to have you do. Hey, these are the guys that do a similar role or have done it before. Learn from them." And then, I mean, when we showed up, man, like I mean, these are the big dogs now. And it wasn't not much time had passed until I knew oh, there is a huge difference between a tier one unit and what I did at Team One in Iraq. Um, and part of me was like, this is what I thought it was supposed to be like. But learning quickly, like, it's not. So I think I thrived in that. All I wanted to do was be a good operator, whether I was there for an enabler, whether I was a new guy, whatever the case may be. And that comes with a lot of different things. Like, hey man, I'm going to do all the small work that nobody wants to do, or hey, these guys are. I'm not on the op tonight, but these guys are. I know they're coming back at like 7 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to make sure that I talk to the galley, make sure they get make sure they got meals and whatever, or make sure they have rides from the airport, all that stuff. Like that all came with it as being an enabler. But when it came time for me to do what I needed to do, no, the first op I went on, I remember very distinctively, um, the TL coming up to me, and he's looking me over, and he knew that I was a new guy. At this time, I had just turned 20. Um, so fairly young. And uh, he's just looking me over, and he's like, okay, you don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need this. You don't need that. Like totally stripped me down. Because he's like, we're going to go on a trek, man. Like you're not kicking in the door. So make sure you travel light. So I did. And that first stop was my very first firefight. I was in the C2 element. The assaulters are going to go do their thing, go after their target. We kind of did like a Y infill. We didn't land directly on the X, but it seemed like we did. Um, so as soon as we got there, um, you know, part of my collateral as being a comm guy with that C2 element was like, hey, there's going to be this squad of Rangers with you too. So if we get separated, you go with the Rangers with the C2 element. Um, so as the assaulters approach the target building, start taking fire. The assaulters do, not in my position. Now it's nighttime. They got the gunship up top. That's when I first realized how effective containment fires can be. Um, and what that feels and sounds like and smells like when you're seeing it on the ground, the smell of gunpowder and dust and, you know, wet mud and the rumble of the ground that you hear and the lights that flash in the clouds. Um, and then, you're on the radio so you can hear what the assaulters are doing. And, now we're taking contact from outside. Well, I'm outside with the Rangers. So,
Right.
um, you know, falling back to what you were taught, man, find your field of fire, get in it, return fire. Call out distance, direction, description. That's what I did. Now, people don't know this. A lot of times at night, if you're in an engagement in Afghanistan, unless you're that number one dude in the door, if you're outside in the terrain and it's night, you got to be really close to make out profiles of bad guys and things like that. So you really depend on those air assets. And then, if you get in a contact, you're going to return fire at muzzle flash, most likely. Um, so that's what it was like. I remember jumping over a wall to take cover. And there's one of the Rangers was next to me, and he was a young dude just like me. Um, and we had different kind of, it's the best way to put this. It was just a little bit different, in terms of like, hey, I want to get after it. Like I want to get after it where I'm going to look for the enemy and return fire. And, this certain individual was just like, I shoot where my squad leader shoots, type thing. Um, so the assaulters did their thing. The target ended up getting taken down, no casualties, no injuries. And then, birds came in, got on the birds, went back to Bagram. So that was my first real tick. Um, and they would pretty much continue like that for 4 months in Afghanistan. All along on that deployment, the squadron lost 3 individuals, and I was there for that. And you know, you think about being 20 years old and working with some, the guys that you want to be eventually, and seeing, we talked about emotion earlier and how you receive loss. Um, some of these guys, man, coming back when, they just lost a brother. And, in some ways I did too, even though I didn't know them, but, we were there, we were fighting the same fight to some extent. And, I experienced that loss as well, just on a much lower level. Um, Seeing these guys get emotional, seeing the baddest dude you thought, this guy is a beast. He's a badass. He looks exactly what you think when you think about the word Navy SEAL. So, and then watching that person come to tears. Once the dust settles, once you back to the fob and, you're finally at rest. I mean, man, that really impacted me, because I'm like, man, that's real. That's real stuff. And I was there. Like, I remember having this weird feeling of like, how am I here? Like, I've read the books. I could envision the movie of the book in my head, just, as the author is telling the story, just having the images. And then now I'm a part of it. Part of me was like, how did I get here? Do I deserve to be here? Um, you know, it was just interesting to me. It was
So
very human.
I just want to cut you off for just a second, though. Are you saying that in the second deployment that you're doing, because like we said, they're total opposites of each other, you're already starting to feel imposter syndrome?
Um, I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, if you look at that definition of it, maybe I can see how it could be perceived this way, but it's more of like, man, this is everything that I wanted to do and that I trained to do, and I can't believe I'm doing it. This doesn't seem real to me.
Okay. All right.
So
Well,
almost like
because I think I look at
yeah,
that differently then. If you say it in that way, I understand exactly what you mean. I thought you were trying to
yeah.
compare yourself to the guys that you were with and stuff.
Oh no, I wasn't doing that. Now, like I said, I had a very specific role to do. Trust me, if they were saying, "All right, hey, dude, from Team One, that's not a Tier One operator, we're gonna make you the number one man tonight," I would have done it, no doubt. But that that was just something that wasn't gonna happen.
Right.
Um, so again, I said it earlier, I had a lane and I stayed in it. And throughout, those ticks would continue to happen. Those gunfights would continue to happen every couple of ops. We had a couple clean ones, and then obviously we lost people. So um, where guys got killed and then guys got either fragged or shot. So um, yeah, definitely not an imposter syndrome. I was there to do a role. I wanted to be those guys, but I was in my head. I was like, I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
I'm still learning. Like I'm not there yet. So I was using it as that strictly a learning moment to get better on the battlefield.
So, you talk about when you lose guys and you see them come back and when the dust finally settles. I think a definite thing that we need to talk about, whether it be your first tick or whenever, that adrenaline dump that happens at the end and everything comes to a closing. It happens in law enforcement when you're in your first big thing, and then everything kind of dies down. You get super sleepy or, whatever
Yeah.
it is. Do you remember how you felt?
Yeah. I mean, talk about it, man. It's adrenaline pumping like no other. But I was definitely calm under the chaos. And I remember, as a student, it's ingrained in you. Hey, calm breeds calm. Don't freak out. Uh, so I mean, I thought about that. So I remember getting back on the helo and having this moment of like relief, like, hey, we were in a tick, but the mission was accomplished and no one's hurt. Um, that was a big deal because when I showed up in country, the very first op that the guys went on, I wasn't on it. I was still learning. I was back at at the talk, just watching the op go down, and right on that op, you know, they took contact upon entry. So, dudes got fragged right away. Three guys got fragged, and the dog got fragged. So, they handled what they needed to handle, get back to the bird, and finally getting back to Bagram where we were staged at the time. Um, I'm watching this stuff on the feeds. Um, so and then the very next day, those guys are getting recognized for coming back. So like when they get off the helo, I can just see them, the sweat and the dirt and like, guys that got fragged, the blood and all that stuff. So like it was a slow build up to like, okay, I watched it. I'm experienced the after part of it when guys get back to the team room and stuff like that. But me specifically after that tick that I went on, um, it was, I remember getting back on the helo, TL touching me on the shoulder or whoever it was touching me on the shoulder, getting their head count, getting on the bird, it taking off, and we get a little bit away, and then just being able to be like, all right, okay, cool. That's done. Now all that needs to happen is this bird needs to land successfully back at Bagram. And it did. Um, but specifically when I was talking about, these guys that I see that I want to be eventually one day, seeing their emotions come out and seeing their adrenaline dump and, seeing the different impact that it had on them. But like I said earlier, man, you kind of, we did a little memorial at the flagpole, um, right there. And I went from Bagram to JBAD later. Um, and then you're off, a couple guys will, do the ramp ceremony. A couple guys will escort your brother home, and then the rest are going to stay and continue mission. And we did.
I got to ask you, your career is going fantastic at this point. I mean, your second deployment, you're an enabler for a development group. It's going great. How's your personal life going?
Oh, well, on that first deployment, oh, I'm sorry. For that augment, right? I just got back on that from that first deployment. I had a girlfriend at the time. Um, she knew how I was. She knew I was serious about my job. I just want to be the best SEAL that I can be. I want to learn as much things as I can learn. I'm going to train all the time. I wanted to be gone. I wanted to learn things. And, this is a girl coming from Kentucky, just like I did. So, you know, it was more difficult for her than it was for me. So there were definitely some times, you know, where I definitely put my job first for sure. And then when I came back from Iraq, I just wanted to go back. Like I just wanted to go back and and keep doing the job. And I think a lot of us are guilty of that. You need to have that rest time. But for me, man, I just wanted to learn. And when I found out about this augment opportunity, I mean, I was only home from Iraq for, I don't recall the exact time, but it wasn't very long because that augment was set up while I was still in country.
Of course.
Um, and then coming back from Afghanistan after all of that, um, my girlfriend could probably tell I was a little bit different because I hadn't experienced loss on the battlefield yet. And yes, I didn't know these guys on a personal level, but we were there together. I knew what they looked like. I knew how they walked. I knew what they looked like on night vision. I knew what their voices sound like. I remember how they would present themselves when we're in our mission brief. And I'm just sitting there hanging on every word, just like listening to them. So I didn't know them very well, but I mean, they were my brothers too. Uh, so I was different when I came back. In that I I was still hungry, still very hungry, still wanted to work. And again, like I said, there was no time for me to just come back and want to give her that. Like, hey, I'm back now. We can relax a little bit. Let's me and you go do something. Um, I was just all about work. And when I came back from Afghanistan, like I said, my platoon that I was assigned to at Team One was already starting the ULT trip, and I had to go right back into training. So even if we wanted to argue or talk about it, um, she didn't have the time.
Did you care?
I did care. There was definitely, like I said, this comes back to that how I experienced loss and how you can become callous. I just think there's a point with my state of mind then was like, look, I'm required to do a certain job and I'm trying to get better and be the best team guy that I can be. And when I go to work, I cannot be distracted by things. Um, and not to say that she was a distraction because that's not what I mean, but I mean that if like I had to put the job first. And that can be portrayed as selfish. And I see that. Um, you know,
Is it selfish though when you set that person up for that? It's one thing to do it and it catch them by complete surprise, but you said you were right up front, like, look, this is my job, this is who I am, this is my life, this is what I want to do. So do you still consider it selfish, or is that, hey, I warned them?
yeah, I think I think in theory that's a good, in theory, if you say those words like, oh, hey, you know what you were getting into, um, that might sound okay, but it's not till you're living it and experience it. And I will say, man, I mean, I think most guys would agree with me. Yes, we have a job to do, but we're doing our job with like some of our best friends. Like I'm playing commando in the woods again, man. Um, that's what I wanted to do. And he was alone. Um,
Well,
so
and I was
even
just
though,
about to say, you say that like you almost
yeah,
feel guilty about it because you say I was doing a job, but I was with my best friends. I was playing commando in the woods.
yes.
So you almost sound like you feel guilty about it.
I wouldn't necessarily say guilty. I would say that I should have been able to recognize other people's feelings, especially somebody that loved and cared for me. And so I wouldn't say guilty. It's just as the years went on, instead of I learned to recognize that better.
Okay.
And then when I'm at home, focus more on being at home. For that first deployment when we came home, when I was at Iraq, when we came home, it was just like, all right, hey, go back here. We're going to stop here, get home, unpack your stuff. We'll give you guys a little bit of time off and then kind of take it easy for a little bit. Guys are kind of disaggregated, going to schools, learning new stuff. Um, but I just, it's, I learned to keep work at work. And when I was home, to try to be present. Because even when I was home, even if her and I were doing something, I could tell you I was thinking about work, you know? Friday would come and, you have your Frogman Friday at the team. You go do whatever you're going to do on the weekend, man. But I was ready to go back to work on Monday. There is nothing like driving over that Coronado Bridge and driving down the Strand and smelling the sand and smelling the ocean water. And you walk through that quarter deck and you go through the locker room and you see guys prepping their kit, and you walk past the hallways and the platoon spaces and you see other leaders giving briefs to their guys, and it's just professional. It's like guys really trying to hone in on their crafts, and man, there was something to that for me. I loved it. And it's not to say that we didn't deal with bullshit every now and then, because we did. We are in the military. And for anybody who thought that SEALs didn't deal with it, we definitely did. So, man, I do miss that feeling, but that's what I was all about. And it wasn't until later on where I was just like, especially after that deployment in Afghanistan, when I came back and I'm like, all right, um, you know, 3 people lost their lives here, and I came back, and I need to really cherish the time that I have at home when I'm home, and call my family and talk to them. I mean, call and spend time with her. She was there by herself. She didn't know anybody. So it's not guilt. It was just more like, hey, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was still learning because I'm young, and I'll try my best to do better.
So let me ask you then. You say it's not guilty. You don't feel guilty about it. And you realize it after you get done with this deployment. But I think a lot of guys, when they're done with something like that, this includes first responders, law enforcement, when a big incident happens and it makes them kind of focus on other things in life, they got to think about the other things. They make these big grand ideas that they're going to be like this, but then they fail at it after a while, and then they have to be reminded of that thing. Do you think that happened to you?
Yeah, for sure. Um, you know, she was still my girlfriend at the time, but later on became my wife. And on that third deployment that I had, we were in Iraq. She was pregnant with our first child. So, um, I was really trying, man. And just like a dumb man, I was just like, we're gonna have a baby together, and we got married. So now, things are gonna be better. Um, but it really did, man. Yeah, I mean, now I'm making my way up in rank, and now I have more responsibility because I'm a leader, and I'm trying to go to dev group, and those things are all important to me. And now, uh, now that she is my wife, she's pregnant, and how how am I going to be as a dad, and think about how I was growing up without a dad, and how me and all of our siblings were there for each other. Like, I'm going to do things differently this time. So, um, but it didn't work out that way, man. I was gone a lot, um, busy a lot. Uh, she was out there by herself. Her family's back in Kentucky, and you know, um, we went our separate ways. And we actually, we tried to work it. We tried to work it. We would get in our spats, talk through it, and then we thought things were going to be okay. And then we had another child, have a daughter, um, and then it just couldn't make it work. And there were some things that happened while I was an instructor that definitely impacted that relationship. And at the end of the day, we decided to go our separate ways. So we did separate, and we did divorce. But she's a great mom. We're cordial. We don't have any hurt feelings towards each other. We try to be good co-parents for our children, who are much older now, and with a little bit of effort, and we were able to do that.
With her, and you and I have spoken extensively about this, and we're not going to get into all the details that you and I have spoken about, but I think it's important to point out, or I guess to question the thing where what it sounds like whenever you and I talk about this. And you talked about when she was your girlfriend, and you told her, like, this is my job, I can't be distracted at work. Do you think that was the thing where you saw yourself starting to become distracted with child number 1, child number 2, having a wife that was there alone? It started to be a distraction for you at work, and that I'm not saying that was the the straw that broke the camel's back, but do you think that that definitely fueled that fire of, look, I'm higher ranked now. I cannot be distracted. I don't. There's no other way I know how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm the type of guy, and I think most people that know me know this. Like, I'm either I'm either 0 or 100. There's no in between there. Um, so, and then we knew each other from a young age. So, I talked about meeting Brandon when I left that small town in Ohio to move, and I moved to Northern Kentucky. I was in middle school, so sixth grade. And I remember seeing her, and obviously she saw me, and she hung out in a different crowd than I did. Like I said, I didn't play any sports or anything like that. Um, and she was a cheerleader, and she hung out with the athletes and stuff like that. And then as we, you know, got older, some of the friends that I made in Kentucky, I maintained those friendships, like the real friendships, and still have them now. But I think not only what you just mentioned about me having to put my job first, um, you know, I think a part of it was also she still saw me as that person, that young, scrawny kid from Kentucky. And for me, I was not trying to be that anymore. I just wanted to go learn my purpose and do it. So there's a lot of miscommunications, where she needed support and empathy. I was lacking, and when I would come home from work and need, support as well. She's frustrated because I was gone. And then, you take a problem that an operator is looking at, the world's problems in some sense. And then you look at the problems that she's dealing with at home where it's like, okay, uh, we weren't seeing things from each other's perspective. And instead of being her and I versus the problem, it was just me versus her or vice versa.
I can see that, but I guess the question that comes up with that is that you said you thought that she still saw you as that scrawny kid. Do you
Yeah.
Did she see you as that, or is that in your head? Is that something you're making up?
Um, I mean, she never told me those words, so maybe that's me imprinting a little bit, but because to be honest, I still did too. I mean, you talked about
Right.
imposter syndrome there. I wasn't demeaning my capabilities, but up until that point, fast forward a little bit, growing up, I I mean, not by my immediate family, but I got in trouble as a kid, and I did things that young boys do, or at least I thought that what young boys do. So, there were many times where my mother was told by, whether it was her siblings or friends of the family, they'd be like, "Man, that kid's gonna be trouble. He's gonna end up being in jail or dead, and he's not gonna amount to anything good." Um, I wanted to prove them wrong, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I get that, but at a certain point, haven't you proven them wrong?
Yeah, yeah, um, for sure, yes. So, you know. Man, I'm at to ponder on that question a little bit more because, happy to give you an answer at a later date. But
No,
um,
that
I
that's
just,
fine. But
I
it
just,
really, because even the way you said that she still saw me as this kid, and I'm thinking, did she really see you that, or you? Because we do impose a lot of stuff on ourselves, stuff that we think about
we do,
ourselves. We
we do.
definitely spotlight it to someone else and mirror it onto them and say they think that, when that could be the furthest thing from their mind. Everybody is guilty of that. So I just wondered
Yeah,
if that's the way that it was, or if that really was something that showed up, because the next thing we're going to talk about brings that same point up again. I want to talk about your sisters and what happened that almost derailed your career. We need to talk about the troubles that happened with your sisters, what you did in order to fix those troubles that you thought you were fixing those troubles, and how it almost derailed everything. Because I think it goes back to that same thing, and when people hear this, is that same scrawny kid trying to prove that he can take care of stuff and that he can protect the people that he's around.
yeah. So you just want me to get into that?
Yeah.
All right. So, um, I come back from Afghanistan. I joined back up with the platoon, and I had screened for green team. After that, deployment, I performed well. Um, those guys said, "Hey, man, go to green team. You're the kind of guy that we're looking for. You're a hard worker, all these things." But I still had to finish the workup with the rest of my team. So I came back and screened. I screened positively. I finished up the deployment, and then I had orders to go to green team. So, um, I took the time, took um, took my family back home to Kentucky, so that my wife could have her support group because I'm going through green team. 6 months of training potentially, um, and then I dropped her there. While I was there, I was we come from the same neck of the woods, right? That tri-state area of Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana that I mentioned, it's pretty easy to get around in. Um, so she had her support network there, and I continued. The plan was to continue on after I spent some time at home. Well, while I was at home on leave, I get a phone call on a Sunday morning from my oldest sister's boyfriend at the time, and he said, "Hey," and it's the morning. I want to say it was like 7:30 or so, and he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, your sister's gotten in an altercation at a bar last night. They were assaulted by this dude, and I'm taking this all in instantly, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What happened?" Um, and then I just said, "Where are you at?" And he goes, "I'm at my house," and I said, "I'm on my way." So I get there, he's telling me what happened, and here my sisters come from the hospital. They show up in the vehicle. Um, my one sister, my oldest sister, Kelly, she had her eye socket was broken. She had a black eye. Her nose was broken. Um, my other sister had a broken jaw and had her head slammed against the wall and had signs and symptoms of concussions. And, they still had their hospital gowns on and had blood on them. And I just mentioned to them, I mean, I was red hot, man. I was red hot. Um, Ask any one of my siblings. If I never backed down from a fight ever in my life. And yeah, I was a scrawny kid, but I didn't take no shit either. Um, so I wanted to know who did it and I wanted to know where they lived. So I asked, like, do you know this person? And they said, yeah. And I said, where does he live? And they told me. So I went over to the house. Um, this individual was on their front porch smoking a cigarette. I approached him. Um, I didn't charge him or anything like that, but as I was walking onto the porch, he's puffing a cigarette. We make eye contact. At this point in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm taking this dude down. Um, he actually swung at me first. I ducked it, double legged him. We fell through the front door of his house. Um, I distinctly remember he had a pit bull. I could hear it barking, and then, I could hear it getting closer to me. The thing ended up running out the damn door and leaving me alone. So that was good. But I remember double-legged him, hit him in the face, one punch to the face, and then switching to the elbow and just doing what I thought I had to do. Um, I left after that. Did what I had to do. It's fairly early in the morning. We're talking maybe 9 a.m. this time. And I left, went back home to my sisters. I had a little bit of blood on my hand and my elbow. They asked me what I did, and I said I did what I needed to do. And there was some emotions definitely running high for them, but I was just like, hey, this guy got what he deserved. I'm protecting my family. Um, I just moved on with my life. Now after that happened, um, I called back to the team. I talked to my OIC. I called him and I said, hey, just so you know, this happened. Um, but I didn't. The cops didn't come. you know, I didn't stick around. This person doesn't know who I am, but I just want to let you know I did this. And he's like, all right, man, thanks for letting me know. Uh, if anything comes up, let us know what happens. And couple more days go by. I go to now I'm got to report to Green Team. I got a check-in date. So fast forward a little bit. Now I'm in training. Now I'm trying to focus on training. Um, you know, arguably the hardest military training in the world at that level for tier one unit. Knew a lot of the guys. A lot of guys from Team One were there. A lot of guys that we were on the augment with, and then a lot of the guys, the squadron guys that I augment with them. Some of them were going to be my instructor staff. Um, so I just went into training, went all in, man, and honestly just put that instance out of my head to focus on the task at hand. And then fast forward a few weeks, you know, uh, my wife at the time, she had called me and she's like, "Hey, there's like uh police coming here. They're looking for you." And I'm in Virginia Beach, and I go talk to the cadre, and they did inform me there's a warrant out for my arrest. So I told them what happened. Told them exactly what happened. And man, they had my back. They were like, "Hey, dude, uh, you did what most men would do. Um, but this train's got to keep moving. So go handle your shit. And then if you can get back here in a couple days, you can continue with the class." Well, I went home, back to Kentucky, met up with my wife. And then, now the situation was starting to develop a little bit more. You know, uh, but I had to let Team One know, like, "Hey, man, I'm backing. I didn't make it. I'm like, too much time had passed. Can't stay in Kentucky. So I got to go back to the team." Well, instead of me going all the way back to San Diego and getting my things, I was talking to the Master Chief there, and you know, now I realize I got to go back and forth to court to settle this thing because I did have charges against me. I was charged with felony assault. Um, when I came back from Green Team, turned myself in right away. "Hey, this is me." Didn't like set the bail and got bailed out. Got a lawyer, and they were like, "Hey, we'll handle this in court." Didn't pay much to get bailed out, and then got my court date set and went talked to Team One and got my new orders up to Great Lakes, where I became a dive motivator instructor up there. While I was at Great Lakes, a couple weeks went by, and I'm sitting in the classroom on the base there, and in the middle of the day, going to an instructor class, and NCIS and U.S. Marshals come walking in the down the hallway, and I remember distinctively because we were on break, and I happened to be going through the instructor course with an EOD guy, and us being operators, we were both like, we saw these guys, and we're like, "Okay, what's going on?" And then he had said, "Hey, do you need another guy in the train?" And one of the officers, told him to, shut the F up, and they mustered everybody and put them in the class, and that's when it said, and I'm like, "Oh man, these guys are here for me." So stood in the front of the classroom, they called me out by name. I got right back, I got right up, you know, walked right over to them. They cuffed me and walked me out, but they
Nothing like
had
being discreet.
yeah. I mean, if the NCIS agent, whoever that is that was in charge, if they would have just found out who my senior enlisted leader was, I mean, I was not trying to hide anything.
Right.
In my head, I did what I thought was right and what any man would do. So, like when I was confronted about this, their initial impression of me, it was like, "Hey, this happened here, and now you're here. You didn't tell us you were in the military." Like there was some sense of like hiding it, which I can kind of see in retrospect. But I mean, just I would have came to you if
But
you
what
said
does
this,
one
and we
have to
could have.
do with the other? Who cares if you're in the
Right.
military? What does
Right.
one have to do with the other?
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, unfortunately for me, there was no brig in Great Lakes, so I went to jail. I went to Cook County Jail in Chicago, the greater Chicago area, and I spent a little bit about, I want to say it was 12 days in there, and then I had to get extradited back to Ohio. So I was, waiting for that extradition team to come get me, and then taking that long drive, very, very long drive from, what was a 7-hour drive, into a multiple day drive, going from Illinois down to Ohio, stopping at every jail and prison along the way, dropping and picking people off. So uh, I didn't know what was coming, but I had spoken with my lawyer at the time, and I was just like, he was reassuring me. He was a good guy. And my SCA at the time at Great Lakes in that dive motivator office. and ended up becoming a really good friend. Um, he was a squadron guy. So when I was the enabler, I had met him. And when I was there, he kind of saw my potential and he kind of took me under his wing. And they would go do these kind of small man team ops. And he's like, "Hey, if we ever do this small man team stuff, you're my comm guy. You're coming with me." And I was very fortunate to have him. Well, fortunately for me, even though I was in the circumstance that I was in, that guy was my boss. He was in charge of me, and he was shoulder to shoulder with me throughout that whole ordeal. And he just kept reassuring me, "Hey, man, you did the right thing. Everything's going to settle out. We'll get this handled." Well, now I'm in jail. I've spent my time, like, when I first got there, I was in a cell by myself. I don't know if that was intentional, or if that's just what they do. Like, "Oh, hey, this guy's a SEAL. We want to keep him away from people." I didn't really get a feel of that, but I just didn't know what I didn't know. Um, but man, you lose your sense of time in there. There's no clock. Meals come at different times and they're never the same. Um, but I did strike up a little bit of rapport with some of the CEOs in there. And, I'm not sure because I haven't been on the other side of it. You know, they would look at the paperwork, and I remember this. Maybe one of the guys, the CEOs, would be like, "Hey, man, like, she shouldn't even be in here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Let me out of here." Um, but eventually they did move me to like a general population area, I guess you could say. But it looks just like a big open room with a bunch of bunks on it, and like it was housed with the guys that had, you know, uh, not the worst of the worst, just, and they were getting released on work duty. So, they would spend their day in jail or whatever, and then go out and be on work release and come back. So really, I was just there playing the waiting game until they came and got me. So I would get the little bit of time we had. Um, I mean, it wasn't a yard, but there was a room that had some exercise equipment in there. They let us in there for an hour a day. I made sure that I was in there working out. I did not engage with anybody, um, and no one really engaged with me either. In small conversation or confrontation. Just kept to myself and read books because I was allowed to go to the library. Once the extradition team came, it was back in handcuffs, back in the paddy wagon, and take the long trip. And you know, I didn't know this at the time, but yeah, we were going to stop at a bunch of places along the way and drop off and pick people up with guys that I just felt like I did not fit in. I should not be here. I don't fit in. I'm not one of these people. I don't commit crimes. I don't. I'm not a bad person. I just didn't belong there, and I wanted to be out of it. So finally got back to Ohio, and now I get my chance in court. Well, I remember when I was at the jail in Ohio, they gave me all my things that I got arrested in. I just asked the CO. I said, "Hey, man, like, um, I don't know if this is a normal thing, but I was arrested in my uniform. I'm in the military. I want to look presentable in front of this judge. Like, any way you guys can let me shave my face and like get my uniform together and at least go to the jail in my uniform." And they did. They let me. Um, and then I was the first case, and it was a Tuesday because Monday was holiday, so I got a little extra stay. Um, but I remember first case, the judge comes out, and the lawyer tells me to stand up. I stand up. And him and I had a little bit of conversation before. He was reassuring me. He's like, "Hey, man, we're going to take care of this. You know, don't worry about it now." Um, I just didn't want to be in jail. I missed my new son. He was very young. I wanted to be home. Just wanted to be out of that whole situation. Um, but the judge came out. I'll never forget it, man. Like, this is why I believe in God, because just weird things happen, and I don't think that they're on an accident. Judge sits down and picks up his coffee mug, and it's a blue coffee mug, and it says Navy in yellow letters. The Navy colors are blue and gold. So, um, I didn't know this at the time, but he didn't really address me. He just called up my lawyer and then the prosecutor, and they said their thing, and then they went into a back room, and I sat back down, and then I came out, and my lawyer was like, "All right, you come with me. We're leaving." So I was out. I'm out of jail. We're in the parking lot. We're having a conversation, and he goes, "Look, we pleaded it down. um, you're going to have to pay this guy $55,000 in restitution, and they'll drop the felony charge to a misdemeanor battery charge. So uh, it was a no-brainer. Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. So now I've handled it. It's handled. Now me, I, you know, I didn't have that kind of money laying around. We had what I had to
I
pay
don't
our
think
lawyer, and
I don't think a lot of people have that money laying around.
I had to pay my lawyer, who worked with me, by the way, great dude. Um, and then I had to get back up to Great Lakes because that was my duty station. Well, on the way up there, I call my chain of command back at the team, and the master chief at the time, great, great freaking guy. Um, um, I told him, I said, hey, I got the charges got dropped. They're charging me with misdemeanor battery, so no jail time. But I got to pay this guy $55,000. I mean, I don't have that kind of money laying around. And if I can't pay him, then, you know, I don't know if I get more charges. I don't know if, it reverts back to the felony assault. I don't know. Um, well, amongst him and then some of the guys that I knew at Team One, we talk about the brotherhood and stuff, like some true brothers hearing about my situation, and they raised all that money for me in a week, 1 week. One of my really good friends consolidated all the funds and, went to the bank and uh, put it all in one account, and then transferred it to me, wrote a cashier's check, had my next court date, gave it to the guy in court. And, you know, one, I wouldn't say one good thing, but a good thing that I do remember from that is, every time I had to go into court, because I went 2 to 3 times after that. I can't remember. My SCA, that was the the recce TL from Blue, would come with me every time. So him and I alone, 7 hours there, 7 hours back. Just again, shoulder to shoulder, like a true leader. Um, um, I just couldn't believe that these guys were doing that for me. I mean, I know I would have, but once I gave that guy the money in that last court date, I remember, because when I would show up, I would be in my dress blues, looking sharp, look as sharp as you can, be professional. We all have military bearing. I know how to conduct myself. Well, meanwhile, this guy, um, he's showing up to court in a tank top and basketball shorts. Um, and I do remember, and, every time I saw that guy's face, and we're talking about months going by, um, the punishment that I had given him was still apparent, even after all that time. But anyway, I say all that to say this is that, my family and my sisters, they felt guilty for sure. And I would reassure them, like, hey, you didn't do anything. I did this. I made my own choices. Um, but not all that. He did not get all that money. He was way behind in child support, and apparently he had some kids of his own. And I didn't know how the court system worked, but apparently the child support lawyer was there, knowing that money was coming, and then ready to intercept and give his children, what they were owed. Um, and then yeah, went back up to Great Lakes and tried to settle back in because I'm still on duty there. I still have to serve out my time at Great Lakes. So I had to start over.
Is that the biggest mistake you ever made in the military?
Yes.
It's weird because I didn't think you were going to answer that. I thought you would
Well,
answer it that it wasn't a mistake.
well, I will say this. I should have had better control of my emotions.
Okay.
I told myself to have better control of my emotions when I was driving to my sister's house on the day after the incident. But there was something in me that when I saw their faces and what a man did to them, it just overcame me. So I made a mistake in that I wasn't in control of my emotions, and I didn't reach out to my mentors in the team to tell them what thoughts I was having and what I wanted to do. Now, if that happened today again, I would do it again. Like, I know that part of me would want to protect my family. I would just protect them in a different manner. I would take the right steps and, you know, again, it's no excuse, but being a young person, I just, and being so if I could say that I made a mistake, I should have notified my leadership when I was having those raw emotions, and maybe someone could have talked some sense into me. But I love my family, man, and I stand by that decision still today. I think I still did the right thing. But there's laws, and I didn't follow them.
As you move back throughout your career, this is all behind you. I think that pretty close after this, you're divorced, correct? Pretty close after all this is done.
Correct. Well, as you can imagine, that can be very taxing on a new young family, got a new baby, and,
100%.
we spent what money we had on paying a lawyer and paying extradition fees. And then, we got this big um, gift of charity from the team guys. And there was a sense of relief, and things did settle down, and, kind of went into the groove there. And, we actually, now she's pregnant again with our second child. And, um, but again, it didn't fix anything, because I wanted to get out of Great Lakes as fast as possible. I did not like being stagnant. I did not like, I wanted to go back to Green Team, like go back to what I was saying on that augment, man. Like, I wanted to be those guys. That's where I belonged. I had my senior enlisted advisor there, like, hey man, you got to go back. You got to go back. So he was like feeding me, and I respected him. And he's like, you don't belong here, and I agreed with him. Um, so yeah, ultimately, we, you know, very we decided to go our separate ways. A little bit of a separation process, but talking with my senior enlisted leader at the time, he's like, dude, we just got to get you out of here. And then he reached out to Team One leadership and told them my situation, and I have a reputation at Team One, so they didn't hesitate to pull me back. And it was only with maybe a week, maybe, where I had new orders, and hopped in the truck, called my brother, my actual brother, my blood brother. He came up from Kentucky and helped me drive all the way back to San Diego and check back in. So yeah, checked back into Team One, and I just felt like I had a new start. Like I said, man, those feelings came back to me of like, you drive across that bridge and you're on the base again, and you're in that professional mindset again. And I had just been in jail, so it's like, okay, now I'm back in my comfort zone. I can go do what I need to do. Um, and my ex at the time stayed home where we grew up, and we had always had split custody and co-parented. I saw the kids on holidays and birthdays and spring breaks and summers when I could. They would come out to see me, and I would go out to see them, and vice versa. Um, but I was still being a team guy, man. Same cycle. Back in the workup, back on deployment.
But I got to ask you at this point, because you've got numerous deployments underneath you. You have recently been in jail. You're done with this case. Things happen in your marriage. You get a divorce. You move back here. Your young kids are back there. We keep talking in this conversation about not being able to have a distraction working. With all of those things, I can't imagine that you didn't have distraction while you were working.
Yeah, I definitely had some distractions. Try my best not to. Um, there was a sense of thinking that had failed my family just because of how I came about in my family. And I just told you, yeah, I want to be different for my children. I want to parent differently. Um, and there was a sense of me saying, you're not going to be the dad that you said you wanted to be if you're going to turn around and go back into the same schedule, the same busyness. And um, but there was also a part of me, honestly, that was like, I don't know anything else. I didn't go to college. I finished high school and came straight in the Navy. Everything that I wanted to do, I set out and completed it to a certain extent, and I'm not done yet. And how am I going to support my family? This is all I know. I don't know what else to do.
Don't you
Um,
think you're cutting yourself short there, though?
well, me now, many years later, yes, but in the moment, it's, you know, uh, driving back from Kentucky to San Diego, that's a lot of time to think and reflect.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you start having thoughts that about these things. So it's, I'm just, but at the end of the day, I told myself, and I believed it at the time, and I still believe it now, like, this is my purpose and this is what I'm supposed to do. So, um, as long as I can be, like I told myself before, when I have the kids, be present with the kids, don't be a seal around your kids, be dad. Um, and I did that, you know, uh, as the kids started to get older, every single time I had a break, flying them out, going down there to visit, um, trying to be there for most holidays and birthdays, but I did miss the majority of them. Um, but when I was there, try to make it like dad time, show them the the love that they deserved, and you know, talk to them and teach them stuff, and read books and all the stuff that dads do, and I did it. So I did the best I could, and I think I did a decent job, all things considered. I have a really good working relationship with the ex, and my kids are older now; they're 15 and 14, and we see each other a lot, and like a whole lot. They just left here; they're with me for the summer for a little bit, and you know they really look up to me, and that is not lost on me. So, I think between her and I, the way we grew up in that little tri-state area, we got shown what, both of us, we got shown what wrong looked like, because her upbringing was not exactly the same, but there are some similarities there. So, you know, um, what I knew from, what I saw in my own family is, I have a lot of half brothers and sisters. So, I could see the animosity between my mother and those guys. Like, they hate each other. And, being a kid, my dad was dead, but I remember my brothers and sisters being like, well, he's still my dad. Like, I still want to go see my dad. And then, my mom not being able to see that. So her and I had a discussion, and we were just like, look, the best thing that we can do is understand that we both have differences, but we both need to be there for these kids. And we can't sit and argue in front of each other and call each other names and hate on each other. It's just not going to have a healthy outcome for the children. And it was tough. It was tough at times, but we made it work, and we still make it work. We do holidays together. You know, sometimes.
Right. So, as you move throughout your career, you go back to Team One, ties there. You do a couple more deployments after that, correct?
Yeah. Well, let's circle back to Ty now. So, like I said, I had a good reputation at Team One, and I love all those dudes, and those dudes that did not hesitate to throw money in the hat for me. I personally thank them all. Um, but I got back to the team, and when I checked in, the Master Chief at the time, I only knew him by reputation. We didn't have a personal relationship yet. But he's got his little whiteboard, and he's doing his manning and stuff. That the active platoon was deployed at the time. Um, Almost on their way back, and I could see the names on the whiteboard. So I saw what platoon he put me in, and I saw who my chief was going to be, and it was Ty. And he goes, "Hey, I'm going to put you in Echo platoon," and I saw Ty's name, and I was like, "Man, Ty's going to be my platoon chief. This is awesome." So I know the layout of Team One. I know right where that platoon space is. I walked right over to it, and the door was wide open, like they most usually are, and it was like the graveyard shift, because, like I said, the active platoon was deployed, and the relief platoon was like back in the rear. So as you finish your previous tour of duty and you get your new assignment, you're just waiting for guys to get back or come from other units. But Ty was there. Um, and I walk in that platoon, and like you said in the beginning, man, like Ty definitely coined that Joey B name that used to really bother me. I didn't like to be called that. And at the time I still didn't. And Ty is like the only one who did, and then other guys started doing it. And I wasn't going to win the battle, so I just started accepting it. And you know, now I actually like it. So Ty was super happy to have me in. You know, I was happy to be around the guys again, and we just jived from there. Ty had the same attitude he always did have, on the professional side. He's just like, hey man, like one of these troops is going to Afghanistan. We don't have all our guys here yet, but we're going to make sure we're stacked. We're going to make sure we're training. So we, like I said, we had the graveyard shift. So not just Echo platoon, but other platoons that were gone, that had new people coming in. Instead of having a bunch of segregated platoons with minimal manning, we just put everybody in like one super platoon. And when we had to do sustainment training, we'd all do it together. Um, and man, uh, to Ty, I was a blessing because, and he told me this, he's like, dude, you got the combat experience. It's not just me now. We can kind of help guide these new guys and one platooners and go do some awesome training. And we did. And then eventually, that deployed platoon came back and the guys that were leaving left to go do their next assignment. And, man, we jived. Man, we jived. Great platoon, best platoon of my life.
Let's talk about the day that you and Ty are both hit.
Oh man.
And I want to tell
well,
you that Ty's never told me this story. I didn't know about it until you said something.
yeah. Well, this is so now we're going to Afghanistan, right? We're at Team One, Echo Platoon. Like we put it in the ether. Like, hey, we're the ones that are gonna train better than everybody. We're gonna put in the hard work. We're gonna make mistakes, but we're gonna learn from them. We're going to go to Afghanistan. Everybody wanted to go. Everybody wanted to, chase that dragon. But we just put it in the ether and we were there. So, Ty was on the Advon. He went out there prior to me. And the Advon again is just, hey, the team that's still there, you're gonna go get the AAR, work with them for a week or two, and learn the lay of the land. So he went out with the first group of Advon dudes, and I brought out the main effort after that. We were in the Tangi Valley, man, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by mountains, and we took a helo in, which we were told like it wasn't a. We had heard about rumors about helos getting shot at every time they were in there, but that was nothing new to me. Like the helos got shot at all the time. Um, but at this stage in the game, um, we were not allowed to do nighttime operations. Um, the whole, hearts and minds piece of it. Um, but we had to do things in the daytime, which, took away our best weapon. So,
Which is so counterintuitive.
but I mean, we did what we could. And one thing about Ty's leadership style, man, is he knows who he has, and he knows who are good operators, and he doesn't need to micromanage, and he's going to allow you to make a mistake, but over he's not going to overextend and like if you made a call and him could bow on the radio and be like, hey, scratch that, do this. He was never that type of leader. And if he made a mistake, which we all did as leaders, he would call himself out. Like, hey guys, I did this, I messed up, but this was my train of thought, and maybe we do it this next time. And then let's go in the rehearsal and try again, try again. So anyway, fast forward. Um, One of the things that Ty wanted to do was like, hey, we got new guys here. We got a bunch of experienced guys from Afghanistan. It was like half and half. It was like half new guys, and then half of the other guys, we'd all been to Afghanistan or Iraq, if not once, multiple times. So now this is my second tour in Afghanistan, and we went out on an op. We did a lot of like what we were calling presence patrolling, but it wasn't really like we did have missions. We wanted to go out and impact. We had Afghan commandos with us, but we also had, like the local militia that wanted to fight against the Taliban. Um, so we were going out, still meeting people. We were driving our vehicles out to certain checkpoints, like a Afghan National Army checkpoint or Afghan police checkpoint, and we would meet up with these guys. Well, nothing was really special about this day. We knew where we were going to go, but we're driving Matt V's. These are big vehicles, and that is not the terrain to be driving. You can get away with it in some cases, but like you're going to eventually have to get out on foot and make your way. So we went to this checkpoint, talked to who we needed to talk to, and on the way back, um, man, I mean, we were in our patrol. We had everybody was spread out just the way we need to be, and I looked across my field of fire, and there was a squadron guy with us. Because we had established a reputation at this point, and like some of the tier one guys were like, "Hey, man, you guys are doing shit every day, like almost like we want to come with you," or yeah, so they did. One of them was with us, and he was patrolling right behind me. Uh, he saw a reflection of some glass, and called out. Obviously, a guy's got us in his scope, or whatever kind of sight system they had on that weapon, and he noticed it first, and then he called it out, and then the shots went out. So immediately everyone drops in their field of fire. I mean, it was kind of like, it wasn't chaotic or anything. It was like a couple pop shots here and there. But we did what we were trained to do. We started um, doing IAD drills to get out of the contact, break the contact. There was a significant amount of distance. We didn't know, what was over there. That wasn't our mission. We had taken pop shots before. It wasn't nothing new. But as we were running, making our way, uh, there's all these irrigation ditches everywhere. So I had just ran past Ty. Um, and then I got down into my firing position. And as Ty was running, some time has passed. This is not a long time period. I would say maybe 7 to 10 minutes of like the tick and then moving back to the vehicles. But on the back end of it, Ty's running past me and he goes to say something to me, and then he got a shot fired at him to his head. So when he hit the ground, um, I part of me was like, did I just watch Ty get shot in the head? And that was like a split second because he turned back around and then like he looked at me and I was like, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I got up to move again, and then boom, shot right across my helmet too. So I got down, and now it's like, okay, we're gonna suck mud for a little bit, go a little bit further, and then everybody came out unscathed. Everybody came out unscathed, and there were some some other close calls like that too. Um, but as far as the firefight goes, it wasn't some spectacular engagement of like, oh, you know, a significant size enemy trying to move against us. It was a tactic that we had seen before, um, and we just reacted to it.
When when you look back on your career and everything you did, like just now, you got shot in the head in the helmet, and you said that it was a really insignificant firefight and stuff. I've told you this before when you and I have talked. That I think you mischaracterize stuff sometimes. That you take the humble approach to it. When you look back on your career, is there a moment that stands out every time you think back on your career, whether that be on a deployment, whether that be in a school or whatever? Is there a time that always comes to your mind when you think back on your career?
Yeah. There are many instances that I think about. Some are good, some are bad. Um, but yes, so on that deployment with Ty, uh, it wasn't uncommon to get an ambush set up on you. And we had our TAC EW there. Awesome dude. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he will always be a member of that platoon. That's intercepting enemy conversations. So whether you were getting really ambushed or it was just them saying that Americans were coming, I mean, it was fairly common that you would hear this on the radio. So um, we were no stranger to it. We went to Fob Shank to um, we had just previously gotten off of mission, and the commander there wanted us to come and debrief the leadership. I was not a part of that meeting. I was the LPO, so my job is to run the boys. So hey guys, we're going to Shank. Hey, vehicle assignments. You when we get there, hey, this is the stuff that we need. So we're going. Let's make it worth the trip. So make sure you guys grab all these items, whether it's been ammo, new weapon systems, water, food, whatever, and then like some necessity items where some other individuals were living a little bit more better than we were. Um, but there was this spot from BBK to Shank, man, that was just a tight hairpin turn, and if you were going to ambush a soft unit or a military unit of some kind, like that was the place to do it, and we knew that. So we were always a little bit cautious about how we approached that, whether we were coming or going. Well, now on the backside of that, coming back, we went. The head shed did their brief, and we got all the things resupplied. Now we're heading back. It's still, um, we would say it every time on the radio. Hey guys, we're approaching this hairpin turn. Like, not that we weren't always alert, but hey, extra vigilant now until we
Right.
get past it. Well, we did get past it, um, but I was in either vehicle 2 or vehicle 3. But I was in a flatbed truck. There's 4 of us in there, so all the resupply stuff was on our flatbed. I was in the VC seat, so I'm sitting in the passenger seat of the front. Um, and the truck sits up higher than all the other trucks, kind of a little bit higher. Well, as we're coming through there, I'm looking to my right, and I see an enemy combatant pop up with an RPG. And man, it was like my life slowed down because I saw it. And then there were 2 vehicles in front of me, and I'm just like, you feel like it's taken forever, but it's just a moment in time. And that thing shot, and th- that dude hit the Humvee right in the crow's system. And as soon as that explosion went off, we had our Afghan commandos with us, and these guys were driving side by sides. So, I have been in circumstances where, you're working with the Afghans and they're just not the same. Not the same aggression, not the same tactically. We're just different. So those guys, we knew the call. We knew the call that we were supposed to make, and it was made. Um, but the crow system was down, and those two, the vehicles, our vehicles were too wide because there's a somewhat of a drop off and a lake to our left, and then up on the right were a little bit of the mud hut buildings, and then some elevated terrain. That enemy combatant was in the elevated terrain. Well, when the gunfire started going, so we were contacted on our right, the RPG initiated it, and then on the left side we took more contact coming from across a small river. There was water in it, but like a almost dry creek bed, but there was water in it. Um, so those Afghans ditched their vehicles and went to get cover, and they're blocking the road. So the call was for us to blow through, and then vehicle 1 was not able to blow through because those vehicles were in the way, and we're not going to leave those dudes out there. Um, so now we have a decision to make. We all fall into our fields of fire. We didn't have anyone exposed in the turrets because we had those automated weapon systems where the turret gunner could just run it from a computer. And the time that I think about all the time is one of our fire team leaders. These they could fit a bunch of dudes in them, and they're made to withstand blasts. Uh, Nobody in that vehicle was hurt, but the weapon system was down. And like any other team guys, everyone wants to get in the fight. So one of the dudes jumped out the back hatch um, with a 240, and when he went to shoot the 240, so I had my field of fire to the right. When that guy shot his RPG, I had that moment in time where things slowed down, but I returned fire to that guy, and I I returned fire with a golden egg, so with ATDP grenade rounds from my handheld grenade launcher. And then, as the LPO, I need to make sure that, yes, I'm going to engage in the fight, but I'm in a leadership position. So if guys aren't, in the best advantageous position and I see it, I need to move them around. Well, um, one of the guys gets out the back, great friend of mine, awesome dude, love the guy to death. He's still active right now. He gets out, goes to return fire the opposite direction of me, so now across that wadi that had the water in it, and the gun jams. And the vehicles are taking rounds. Um, I thought that I was going to watch him through the front windshield in broad daylight, um, lose his life. Luckily, he didn't. You know, we were able to corral those Afghans that got in the vehicle. We laid down the contact, and eventually got through, got back into base. Nobody was hurt. I mean, I don't know how, but no one was hurt. Took some damage to the vehicles. Obviously, that crow system had needed to be repaired. Um, but man, I remember getting back and sitting down in like our little team room area. It got emotional. It got emotional because up until that point, we had been doing some good shit. Now it wasn't like, you know, they were gonna go do DAs. I think we did two that total. But you know, these fighters out there, man, they're the real deal. If they want to get in a gunfight, they're going to get in a gunfight, and you don't have to be a tier one operator to be in that right place at the right time if you're looking for a gunfight. So, like we had already kind of established that reputation of getting in some gunfights and then really laying it to the enemy. And then as we do our BDA when we reporting it up, and you know some of the other platoons around were just like, man, the Echo dudes are crushing it. Um, but this was different. This was different. Um, we were vulnerable, and I'll never forget it, man. Ty and our OIC at the time, man, like they wept about their experience and their loss that they had faced, and you know, a bunch of the older guys, myself included, shared stories about you know crazy combat firefights, and it was very humbling, man. Like guys just you could tell that there was guys been waiting for a long time to get this out.
Did it feel good?
It felt good. It felt good, and you know, we said our piece, and then after that, we just kind of like, hey, you know, we ain't trying to be like we want to go do the job that we're here to do, but if we can remove ourselves from putting ourselves, I mean, this is gonna sound counterintuitive, but like, um, just be smart, make smart decisions, make tactical decisions, and you know, me and Ty talked about that a lot after that. You know, on the same deployment, talking about that, like one-on-one conversations, and you know, he he just he was he was afraid to lose somebody under his watch, which understandably so. I mean, there were many times on that deployment. You know, Ty was in the front of the patrol. I was always in like the rear fire team, and my fire team was um, like the heavy weapons guys and the grenade launcher guys and stuff like that. So when we would get they would set up these ambushes on us, um, I mean, back to the basic, man. L-shape ambush. Let's counter ambush them. And I was always in that L shape on the end. And, you know, sometimes I may push myself a little too close and you know, we would get back and Ty would be like, man, you scare the shit out of me sometimes. And I'm just like, dude, I'm not seeking glory or anything here. There's no glory to be had. So, not in like an intense way, but I could tell that he was just like, man, dude, just I know you're thinking about decisions and you're making good tactical decisions, but I just got to say it type of thing. Um, and then, you know, after that, so you had asked me, are there times that I think about? Yes, that's one of them all the time. Um, Another good thing that I think about is I didn't have uh, none of my family members came out to my graduation, which you know, I don't feel any type of way about it. It's just, you know, it's expensive to fly to San Diego, and I got a big family, so we had talked about it and it was like, oh, well, one person can do it. But I wanted everybody or nobody. And I wasn't going to take any offense to it. So like getting my trident pinned on my chest and just feeling like, man, I did it. Um, Here's this dude that came from a arguably traumatic childhood, made the best of what he had. Um, Scrawny kid, didn't fit in to some extent, and then finally accomplishing what you set out to do and prove the naysayers wrong, and I did it. So I was a very proud moment um, for that. And another thing that I think about a lot too is after that deployment when we came back, um, you always have an idea of who's coming in to relieve who. Well, um, the person that was coming to relieve me, his name was Charles Keating. Um, Goes by Chuck or Charlie or C4. Um, Great dude. I mean, I'm just telling you, like him and I never served together in like an official capacity as part of the same unit, but everybody knew who this guy was. I mean, he's the type of dude that when he's around you, he just makes you feel like he's your friend. Like he's interested in what you have to say or do, and he's laughing, he's smiling, he's telling jokes, and he's just that type of guy. He's got a very good energy, and you have a couple interactions with him, and it's like, man, this guy, just a great dude. So I heard he was coming to Echo Platoon, and I was stoked. Um, on that deployment, it was my LPO tour, and it was good deployment. I had good evaluation, so everyone assumed I was going to make rank and become chief, but I didn't. Um, and there was somewhat of a relief from that because at the time we were switching to a new model where we were going to have two senior E6s in the platoon, to have like just more leadership. So I didn't make it, and I was like, "Hey, Ty, make sure I stick around so I'll do another go. I'll do the LPO again." And we talked about it, and everyone was kind of good with it. Um, well, that didn't end up happening. We get back to the beach, and Team 3 was short a guy. Um, I'm sure you could understand how we don't have enough bodies to fill leadership positions. They were short a guy. Everyone had expected me to make chief anyway, so they kind of put me in a platoon again as a senior E6, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna make it anyway, but so you're just gonna fall into the chief slot when you make rank." So I left Echo Platoon and went to Team 3. Now, Team 3 had a great reputation, like I said earlier in the podcast with Bruiser and everything. So I was stoked to go. Um, I was a little, I mean, I did get the wind taken out of my sails a little bit by leaving Echo Platoon, but I mean, it comes with the territory, man. We don't stay together forever. Everybody wants to do it, especially when you have that true brotherhood, we talked about earlier. I really felt that with that platoon. So I did not want to leave, but I knew I had to. So I left, went to Team 3, and immediately started doing their workup. Took my little bit of time, um, home with the family. I had a new girlfriend at this time. Um, so, once I got into Echo Platoon and we did our full workup, I met my current wife. She's my girlfriend at the time we started dating. We get back, find out I'm going to Team 3. But I had a job to do. I went to do the job. The guys at Team 3 heard about what we were doing in Afghanistan. Everyone gave us props for it. Everyone's got hearing about it. Everyone hears the rumors. And I was happy to be a part of that platoon. But one day, man, I was at home. Echo Platoon went back to Iraq. So a lot of the guys that were in the platoon stayed. And I would keep in touch with them, make sure see how they're doing, everything like that. I remember waking up early in the morning and seeing something on the news to the effect of, commandos dying in Iraq on Fox News or something. Well, something just didn't sit right with me. And, I wanted to know. And, we have high side computers at the team. So I get on my motorcycle super early, 6, 7 in the morning, drive into the team. No one's at Team 1. They're deployed. So it's, ghost town. But I know who's in there. I know those guys. So I go in there. their operations department's there. I go talk to them, and I said, "Hey, man, are any of the guys hurt from Echo?" And just he turned to look at me, and we knew each other. Not great, but we definitely knew each other in reputation. We've had some interactions, and he was choked up. So I knew right then and there that he had something to tell me that it wasn't good. So he told me that Chuck died. He'd been shot. Didn't believe it. And, I felt sick to my stomach, just empty inside. But team one and team three, we share a locker room together. And like I said, it's a ghost town at the team. And as I was making my way down the stairs, there was another member from Echo Platoon, the one that I was in, who was back from deployment taking care of some stuff. And I saw him in the locker room, and he saw me. I was crying, and he had already knew that he passed, and he knew that I knew. We didn't say anything to each other, but he was over by Chuck's locker. Um, so we sat there for a minute, and we we hugged each other and didn't know what was coming next. So I walk over to team three, and I went straight into the skipper's office, and I walked in there. I was emotional. I was crying, and then he's getting ready for his morning meeting, and he sees me. He's got somebody in the office, but he sees me in the hallway, and I kind of peek my head in, and he sees me. He sees my state, and he came out into the hallway to see what was going on. I couldn't even get the words out. Um, but I didn't have to say anything. I didn't need to get the words out. He gave me a big hug, and he said, "Hey, man, we're gonna get through this. But we need to take the care of the family." Well, Chuck and his family had a house right there in Coronado, like you could walk to it. So after that, man, we all got word, and everybody knew Chuck. So we just went over to the family, you know, to the family's house, and everyone was there for support. The ones that were still there, and we tried to do the best we could to, you know, when this happens, is you have one of the greatest support networks you could ask for. This stage in the game, uh, all branches had seen tremendous loss, and all soft communities and infantry communities, and I mean, we we got good at supporting one another, but and the culture at the time, like I said earlier, man, you come tell your stories about them. Everyone's got a little something different, say how they remember them. You have a few drinks, you do a toast, and then you got to get back to work. But Team Three had the assignment of depending on what the family had set aside for his memorial, we were gonna take take our part in that. We were gonna be there to assist the family, and we did. I mean, every dude that I knew just wanted to be there to be a part of it. Uh, and what the family had asked us to do is we knew the body was coming into the States, and they fly him in. to this, same location that we've been at before. And a select few of us went up. Uh, I mean, it was probably about maybe 10, 12 of us. When we got there, we met with the honor guard. We knew what time the flight was coming in. And I went up to the honor guard with a buddy of mine. I said, hey, look, man, like, you know, we would like to be the ones to like receive his remains. Um, but, you know, this is your duty. This is part of the job that you did. So we want to make sure we don't mess it up. So can you please teach us like how we're supposed to face and the things we're supposed to say? And, you know, everyone's there in their dress blues. So, I mean, bless these guys, man. They were like, absolutely. We'll show you. We'll guide you through it. Did a great job. I mean, super humbling moment. But then the plane lands and we go up to do our thing. And there's two guys from the platoon coming with him, escorting him. So I remember that moment when I got the news because I had the feeling. But on that same moment, in that same vein, walking up to the ramp to receive Chuck, uh, we all take our positions on the casket and we start walking him back into the hangar. And I don't know who it was. I don't want to assume anything, but his wife at the time, maybe, or, a family member. I just hear someone cry out, Charlie. And I knew it impacted me because, well, for many reasons, but even though I was feeling the way I was feeling, the person that just cried out like that, loved him in a different way than I did. So those are just a few. I'm sure there are more, but those are the most common ones that I reflect on all the time. Um, but yeah, I've never really told that before, the way I just did, because of the emotions. But those are some examples.
I have to ask this because this is the question that comes into my mind is that we've talked about loss for you since early childhood. We've talked about it. This whole conversation we have. And we've talked about how you compartmentalized it at points, how you've moved it around. I got to understand what it was about Charles that was so different. Why this loss affected so much, because we've talked about it. You lost guys in combat. You had been through all of this before, but this was on a whole nother level. Is there a reason?
Yeah, great question, man. And trust me, I'm not taking anything away from the loss that I experienced up until then. But man, it just got so pumped up. Like, hey, me and you are gonna be these leaders together, and this is gonna be awesome. And hey, man, you're gonna love the guys in Echo Platoon. You know that thing, that brotherhood that everybody talks about. Well, we actually have that. Um, and he fit right in with our culture. Work hard, play hard, take care of each other, uh, be a part of each other's families. Um, and even before we left, he was doing that because he knew he was going to be a part of it. So you know, I think there was a lot of buildup, and then me just being to the point where I'm like, man, I couldn't ask for a better career. I'm getting super experienced, and I'm doing the things that I want to do, and I can't wait to work with Chuck, and it's going to be great. Um, so it's hard for me to put my finger on the exact reason why, but man, other than saying that Everybody loved that dude. Everybody did, and still do. I mean, I wear this bracelet every day. Um, I just saw his wife, a couple weeks ago, and it was like, we didn't skip a beat. Big hug, you know. I still see his smile all the time. Uh, but yeah, that's a good question. I really need to sit and think about what sets it apart, but that's a big part of it, man. He just great reputation, great dude, great family, great everything. And just so down to earth and just ready to help you out and never tried to be better than anybody else. He just was. Um, just very nonchalant and like go with the flow type of dude and joke about everything, good, bad, or indifferent, lighten up the mood. This energy about him that would just emanate off of him. And I didn't even know him as well as most teen guys did, especially not, the ones that he had served with shoulder to shoulder. And then, you know, his brothers, you know, so I, that has a lot to do with it, I would say. But I think some of it also has to do with, when I made that rank and I had to go to team three, um, part of me, uh, he took my spot. He took my spot. Um, and I'm not saying it should have been me, not him. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying, man, things could have been different if we were, maybe things could have been different if we were together, or if I was the LPO, maybe he could have focused on being a sniper, or you go through the what ifs, and I think that's why it had a bigger impact on me because I was so close to it. Um, yeah,
You think it'll ever go away?
man, I tell you, I found ways to deal with things, and obviously the guys from my generation and just prior to me, um, PTSD is a real thing and TBI is a real thing, and you hear about these soft guys coming out and speaking, and trust me, I never imagined myself doing a podcast, so you know, but guys are doing it, and I can really appreciate the reason why they're doing it, and I will always remember them, all of them, because we owe it to them to keep their memory alive. Um, but like I stated earlier, I could sit here and wallow in my sorrows, or I could do what Chuck would want me to do. He knew I was a good team guy. Go be a good team guy. Finish off strong. He knew I was a dad. Go be a good dad. You know. So I think about that. Could sit around and whine about it, or you can think about them watching over you, saying, "Hey, you know, I still see you. This is not what I want for you." And that helps a lot.
When your career was over and you stepped away and transitioned, how do you think you took everything that you learned from all those years? Because at one point in this conversation, you said it's all I knew. And to continue to go on throughout your career, it was all you knew. You got more informed, more mature with your decision making. But as you step into transition and you turn this next chapter of your life, what is it that you took away, and what is it that you put to work every day in this civilian life now?
Yeah. Well, after that, I continued on with Team Three and did two pumps with them. Shortly after that, I went to be the detailer, which is kind of like, placing guys in the spots that they need to be in to stay on their career path. Um, and then uh, shortly after that, um, my mother-in-law, because I'd gotten remarried to the same girlfriend that I discussed earlier. I mean, man, what a trooper! She's exactly what I needed. Um, you know, uh, much different than me, but uh, I mean, it's kind of funny. But when we first met each other, we'd seen each other bopping around Coronado, and because she lived there, but so we'd met in passing a few times, and you know, finally I asked her out. She told me no, um, in like the nicest way she could, and then we kept seeing each other. So I eventually asked her out again, and we went out. But she said one of the things that she used to tell me is she's like, when I saw you, you just looked so mad all the time. You just looked mean. Um, when she did meet me, I had a beard. Probably looked a lot older than I was. Um, she's like, yeah, you just look mad. And later on, as our relationship started to develop, because we got married after I came back from Afghanistan, but we were dating the whole time during. So she was waiting for me. And later on, I had my third child with her, and we got married. But later on, she would tell me like, you know I could tell that you were hurting, and you had a lot of pain behind your eyes, and she wanted to fix me. Not in a sense of like, hey, I'm gonna make this dude do whatever I want. It wasn't that.
Of course.
It was, and I needed that. I definitely did. Um, but she's great. She's the best thing I could have had at that moment in time. Still, I mean, couldn't say enough good things about her. She's so funny. All the friends that we have, they always say how funny she is, and she should shoot her shot being a comic. And I've been telling her that too. But um, she just makes light of things, and I love her to death. Um, but I moved on from Millington. Her mother, had passed. Her mother had gotten cancer and passed away relatively quickly. And I didn't really hear. I didn't know a billet like this existed, where you could go to a certain part of the country and work for like a recruiting district, and you could be back in your hometown or wherever. But being that I was the detailer, I found out who the guy was that was in the New England area, because my wife's from New England. And he said, yeah, that billet's about to be gapped. You can take it. So I did. So we were able to go back to her hometown. We literally moved into the house after her mother passed, and until we could find our own place. It was during COVID, so things were a little hectic then. And then I started working, you know, uh, for my Twilight tour. On my way out. I knew I was on my way out. I knew I was done. I was at terms with it. I got three kids now, and now I just I was ready for a break. Um, I was ready. So we moved out to New England, started doing the recruiting thing with the commands, and um, it was a good transition because I left the team, so very different dynamic to come to a command like that, because I was the only one in the whole area on active duty in this role. I'm not saying I was the only SEAL in New England, because there were more, but it was a good transition in that I was still working for the Navy. I was still part of my job was to mentor and train the upcoming new generation. So if they had any aspirations to do like SEAL, SWIC, EOD, or diver, I was their touch point in New England, and there were guys like us all over the United States. So when the recruiters find the bodies, and they have a subject matter expert to talk about the things, and I liked the role. Did well in the role. Um, but it was good transition because I was still in the Navy, so it was kind of almost like a crawl, walk, run situation. It wasn't like I left the team fresh off of deployment and got off the plane and got my DD-214 and then I was done. So it was a slow trickle, and I think that definitely helped for sure. And then my wife was going through pain. So, she just lost her mother. She had a great childhood, different than mine. I wasn't used to seeing that that good family dynamic in the sense that mom and dad are still together,
Of
and
course.
both kids go off and go to college, and I'm not diminishing my childhood in any means, because like I said, and I keep saying, my mom did the best that she could and with what she had, and she did damn good. She's a tough woman and I love her to death. Um, but that shaped me, that growing up like that. So I don't want it to be different. Um, so my wife was going through some pain, and she was there for me throughout. Chuck died on her birthday. Um, Chuck died on her birthday, and she's a stickler for birthdays, man. She doesn't have a birthday; she has a birth month. Um, and she deserves it. So, and it always falls around the Kentucky Derby. So we make a big Derby party out of it and have a bunch of friends over and just have a great time. And, you know, um, she needed me to be there for her like she was for me. Um, and I just imagine the type of woman that takes, because now every year on her birthday, she knows that um we're gonna celebrate her birthday. But she makes it a point to tell me, like, hey, I know you're thinking about Chuck, and I just want you to know that I am too. So that's the kind of person she was. And being that it was somewhat of as an easy transition, although it was a meaningful job and I enjoyed it and I still do, um, now I'm seeing something different that I never got to see before. I was removed from the constant, training trips and trying to be the best team guy you can be. And now I'm at home. So we're trying to really deal with, like, hey, you're home like all the time now. Like, I never saw you do this, or I never saw this side of you, or, you know, um, but the best thing that definitely sealed it for me when I knew I was going to be all right, meaning that I wasn't, I wasn't, it wasn't going to be a bad transition, is when my kids started school. My youngest started school. Um, and then me being able to take him to the bus stop, um, pick him up at the end of the driveway, watch all these little micro growing moments that I missed with my older two kids, and being a part of the sports. And now this is all three, because I'm very involved in their sports, and they're all terrific kids. I could not ask for a better family and an extended family. So, watching him be able to do that, and going to soccer practice and baseball practice and seeing him get excited, I knew then and there, man, I gave what I owed to the teams, because those dudes at Team One had my back and saved my ass when I got in trouble. So I knew I was going to do 20. That was my way of paying the community back, but I did pay everybody back physically too. Took some time, but I did it. I I owed it to my family now. I'm done with the training, man. I'm done with the deployments. I'm done with the chaos. I need to be here now and move on with the next portion of my life. And that was a good way to do it, because it was a slow trickle. I was still in the Navy, but I was pretty autonomous in the things that I was responsible to do. I was good at it. Um, and that made it easier.
The last thing I kind of want to talk about to wrap the conversation up is, of course, the nonprofit and then the woodworking. So let's talk about them both and tell how people can help out with them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for asking me about that. Well, um, yeah, the woodworking, like I said, I had that artist mind, and I always have. Just a lot of creativity going up there. I like to make things. I like to draw things. All sorts of, painting, drawing, sculpting, whatever the case may be. And when I was the detailer, it was during COVID. We had a lot of time off, and you know, no one was going to work. You were working from home. Um, this was, an office job at this point, still a SEAL, but like I'm unoperational. I'm helping out other SEALs now. So I would just mess around with my garage, and you know, I I was just messing around and I made a flag, and it turned out like a wooden flag. It turned out not so good. Um, and I'm a stickler for detail, man. And even some of my best pieces, I'm just too critical of myself. I always see the flaws. And then, I made this flag, and my neighbor came over, and he's appreciating the flag and stuff. He's like, "Hey, man, you could probably do like I saw this thing on the internet where these guys are making these flags look wavy." So I had time, and I tried it, a little bit of trial and error, but I made one. It came out great, and man, I'm notorious for this. I'll make something really cool, and then I give it away. I give it away to somebody that I care about, or it's meaningful to them. So I gave that flag away as a retirement gift, and then after that, some of the guys in the shop there were like, "Hey, man, can you make one for me, or can you make one for this dude because they're retiring?" And then so I started doing it, and then started to establish a small reputation of like, "Hey, this guy's doing this flag. He's a team guy. Like, this guy's retiring, or this guy's separating, or this guy's going to a different unit." So that's kind of where it started. And then when I came out to Tennessee, or to Massachusetts, I was like, I'm gonna keep this going. So I would just make flags every now and then, and then at this point, I knew I was transitioning, and my wife brought up a good point. She's like, start an Instagram page, and see if you can make something out of this. So definitely still some work that's needed in that regard, but I do have an LLC, and I am making stuff out of wood, not just flags. I wouldn't call myself a woodworker. I'm still an artist, still learning how to do all the fine woodworking stuff, and I enjoy it. And it's therapy for me. When I do that kind of stuff, I think about those times that we've spent overseas, and the lives that lost, and the people that I cared about, and moments in time, all while I'm carving or painting or sculpting, and I'm reliving it in my head, but I'm doing it in a good way, because um, I'm putting my emotion into the artwork. So that really helped. So that's what I do. So yeah, woodworking, that's kind of how I got into it. And then with the nonprofit stuff, like I said, I mentioned my wife, and met some friends through her. Known him for a super long time, great family. His name's Paul Keys, great guy. Um, he just reached out to me one day, and he said, "Hey, man, this is what I want to do. Want to know if you want to be a part of it." So um, one of the founding members, and owners, there's three owners of Club 214 Land and Sea, and it's a nonprofit organization. It's a veteran first responder kind of organization, but we do all kinds of things. We do meetup events. Right now, it's hubbed in Florida, in that like Tampa area. We do 7 events a month, and that may be anything from community events, just getting veterans and their families together. And not just veterans, by the way. If you're a family of a veteran member, or a family of a first responder, like, we don't turn anybody away. Just community meetup, and go out and have fun. Bring the kids, bring the fam. Come somewhere where you're comfortable to be, and then uh, help guys and girls get jobs. Help them with their VA claims. We do comrades and coffee, where they talk about business opportunities for veterans, and then it's starting to grow. You know, it's getting. I mean, I'm wearing some of the attire now. Club 214, trying to represent all the branches of the military. Obviously, DD 214 is where we get Club 214, so it's getting big. It's busy work. Because I do have a day job. It's hard to balance both sometimes, but it's doing good things, and I see a good future in it. And if you're interested about anything regarding Club 214, or if you're down in the Florida area, and you're looking for a group to be a part of, you can find us on Facebook, Club 214 Land and Sea. You can find us on Instagram, Club 214 Land and Sea. We're still learning things, but we don't turn anybody away. Everyone has a good time. We're doing good things down there, and I'm looking forward to see how it expands. Uh, but yeah, that's, I guess,
Well,
what I do
it's a
now.
perfect transition to how everyone can get a hold of you. Let's talk about the social media, websites, all that kind of. You just did a couple of them, but let's talk about everywhere that someone can find you.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. So what I'm doing now is I work for a company called T3I. It's a great company. It's ran by a team guy, a lot of veterans in there, and one of their subcontracts is there are 30 of us out there in the United States that mentor and coach these young men and women that want to go do the jobs that we did. So in parallel with that recruiting thing that I was doing on my active side, I am still going down that road as a contractor, as a civilian, and it means a lot to me. So, this thing was pretty long-winded, and I appreciate your time, but one thing that I want to stick out is if you're out there and somehow if my story impacted you in any way, and you could see yourself in me now, we need good people. We need good people, and if I can do it, you can do it. So if you're looking to serve your country, and I mean, go to the recruiter. There's recruiting districts near you. Um, you will get in touch with one of us eventually, but if not you, then who? But like I was saying, T3I, great company. They do all kinds of stuff there, not just this contract. They have multiple government contracts. A great place to work, good environment to work. You have a voice there. And I really like having an impact on the next generation of warfighter, and speaking to them and telling them stories about what I went through, and how my upbringing was similar to theirs, because I see myself in a lot of in these kids. So um, yeah, on social media you can find me. I'm on Facebook. You just find me at Joseph Brackett, and you can find me on Instagram for woodworking, blackout underscore woodworks, and all the Club 214 stuff. You know, uh, hit us up on Instagram, Club 214 Land and Sea, or find us on Facebook, Club 214 Land and Sea. Um, yeah, that's it, man.
Man, this has been awesome. We were worried how long we were going to go. We made it almost 3 hours and 20 minutes. So we joked about 4 hours. We almost hit that goal. So it was a absolute honor to have you on this show, man. Your story is amazing, and I'm so happy that you came on.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you having me on, and you know, uh, I appreciate it, and thanks for allowing me to be vulnerable. I appreciate that too. It's not something that I'm used to, but I wanted it had to happen. You know, um, but I appreciate your time as well, DJ.
Yeah. Guys, if you, like he said, if you like his story, you like what he was telling you, you see yourself in him, all of those places, of course, they'll be on the website where you can find out all that. They'll have pictures of him. There'll be all the connections, all the links, everything like that will be there. Now that you know where you can find Joey, let's talk about where you can find me. As always, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast, and you can find me on YouTube where all these conversations, they're in video form. That's at the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. But your one-stop shop, it's going to be dtdpodcast.net. That's going to have everything, what we're doing, where we're going, blogs, pictures of Joey. Each person has their own episode page. Everything will be right there. It'll connect you audio, video. You can leave me notes. You can leave me messages. All of that is right there. So make sure you go there, dtdpodcast.net. And let me bring up one more thing. My buddy Hoot over at Nomadic Research, man, nomadicresearch.com. If you want hats, shirts, hoodies, anything for the outdoors, that's going to be your place, nomadicresearch.com. I just got back from a trip. Took their bag that they sent me. I packed a week and a half clothes, and I still had room left over, and it was awesome. It transitions from a bag to a backpack. There's so many good things I can tell about it, but that's the guys that you want to go with, nomadicresearch.com, and check out their new podcast at Nomadic Research. They're doing some great things. They're having some guests on there, and they're really telling their story. So make sure you go check them out because they help make this show happen. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Make sure you check us out. Make sure you share, like, subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend, all those things. If you like what we're doing, please help the show grow. We want to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so make sure you do it. That's going to be it for this week. That's Joey. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later. This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com.